Hey, how you doing? For some reason, the background's not working, so I don't know what's going on there. I guess we're in black today. Oh, there we go. There we go. My computer's acting up. It's about to die, and my internet sucks. But other than that, everything's perfect. So, welcome to Comic Book Team Up. This is RJ for the Fourth Age, and we always have a guest. Well, not always, but this week it's my buddy Mike. Mike Desharnais is creating his own comic. He's on issue 2 of Marshall Strong over on Kickstarter, and I'll bring that up in a few minutes. But first, we'll Snappy Panther. What was the expression, Mike?
Witty banter and snappy patter.
Yeah, Mike and I both worked in the same comic book store, the Incredible Pulp in Baldwin, and that somebody came in and insulted us. This store is not the normal comic book store filled with witty banter and snappy panther. And we just, they made fun of us, so we just made it our thing and joked about it for years.
He actually was so upset that he handed out flyers criticizing the store at a convention or something, and on it literally said that unlike other comic stores, you'll find no witty banter or snappy patter. And he handed this out to people. That's a lot of anger.
Yeah. So that was how you trolled people before the internet.
Right.
You made flyers.
I think it started over. He thought something was for sale that wasn't for sale. It was a pulp novel or something that was displayed, and that was enough. That's what you get in comic stores sometimes.
RJ, have you had any bad experience at a comic store that you wouldn't go back, or?
Oh yeah, there's a couple that I have that I wouldn't go back to. There was 2 here where I live now, and the place I went to was just a hole in the wall. That's where I went. I like that place.
Yeah,
but the other one. The other one was, had T-shirts of Comics Are for Everybody in like 2016. So, their kind of way that they would deal with people. Anyways, but, I don't go there. That's, well, I'll leave it there. But I'll just say the people there don't know anything about comics. It's just a Funko Pop store, right?
Yeah. It's funny. On Fridays at work, everybody goes to this Dominican diner right by my job. I'm in Manhattan now. And I'm like, is the food good? And they'll go, the view is excellent. All right. So I go in, and I got to admit, there's a beautiful Dominican woman, just a knockout, So I go in, and I'm like, where's the menu? Like, no, it's cafeteria style. So I walk back up to the front, and there's food. So I'm like, hey, is that soup? And she goes, no. I'm like, okay, all right. And then the guy came in behind me, and she started talking to him, and she ignored me. And I'm just like, I don't care how good the food is. I don't like this service. And, so the guy's like, what'd you leave for? I'm like, I want to eat. They're like, eat. Did you see? I'm hungry. I mean, I'm in Manhattan. I can see hot girls anytime you turn your head. I want some food. So they're making fun of me now at work. But anyway, that has nothing to do with anything. So, let's address the chat. We got Paul. Paul is Mike is one of my longtime V&V gamers. Mike made up a character called Marshall Strong that is like, would it be fair to say he's Nick Fury and Captain America rolled into one?
Those are elements. I would include the Lone Ranger in there.
Yeah, he's a military patriotic hero. Right. Right. So he was Major Marshall Strong. He got promoted to Colonel Strong. And unbeknownst to me, we both started making comics and then started releasing them at the same time. I was like, oh, we should have coordinated better. It would have been
right. When I was writing the adventures of Marshall Strong, I basically started with the adventures we had in your world, and then just kind of using that as a guide, but not sticking to it. Had I known,
right?
Like I said, we could have, coordinated so that it's almost like mine is an Earth 2 of John Bua's world.
Everybody knows that I'm a stickler for continuity stuff. So, like, when issue number 1 came out, I was okay. Everything works. Nothing. There's no problem.
Just wait.
Just wait. Things will change. So we'll see. And the reason I brought this up is Paul is a third member of our group. He role plays the character Magnum, who is the hulking guy with magnetic powers. That you guys, RJ, are you familiar with the term Munchkin?
Well, from like popular culture, yeah.
Yeah, that's a person who manipulates the rules to get the best. That's Paul. Paul F. Munchkin.
It's a
All of
rules
his
lawyer.
characters are the most powerful characters to ever exist. They break the rules, but it's kind of fun though. It's kind of fun. I want him alive. No disintegrations. That's Darth Vader talking to a Boba Fett. And then RJ, you have the Valiant Heroes. That's on Indiegogo right now. And
I still get people ordering Valiant Heroes.
good.
Still.
It's a good book. I mean, book is it's the same art as Heroic Tales. If you're a fan of Heroic Tales, it's the same artist, Renzo Rodriguez. Right. And then this is your new comic coming up. This is a preview for you want to tell us about this, RJ?
Oh, Fate to Blue, yeah. Fate to Blue is basically Indiana Jones meets film noir. So it's set in 1929, 1930, and you basically got a guy who just wants to be left alone on his farm, and he happens upon, well, let's just say some supernatural powers that drive him into exile and wandering America.
Is it set in the same world as Crom and the Valiant Heroes?
Yep, everything in my universe is all set in the same universe, but different times. Usually I jump around in time.
Yeah. But you get to follow the same rules for the way powers and supernatural and everything like that works.
Yep.
Yeah. What were we talking about? I think Dave Brink over at Genuine Comics says he doesn't like magic characters. He says because they just pull whatever solution out of their butt. I mean, how would you deal with that? You have magic users, right?
I have magic users. Well, we'll talk about Crom the Destroyer. I have two different kinds of magic users. They're fighting one another. One is basically, because we're going like 10,000 BC or close to that. One of them is a scientist who has scientific magic that just hasn't been invented yet. And the other is someone who channels demons. So,
okay. Mike, the issue 1 of Marshall Strong didn't have any magic abilities, right?
No, because I'm trying to think. It just featured characters that I used in your campaign, and I always do the same.
So what Mike's talking about is we role played. I did a story where it was like Marshall Strong met his demise, and Mike is retelling that story. So
yeah,
I wrote your comic book.
I made it better. No, when we had that adventure years ago, I said back then that I'd love to see that, in a comic book, and I think you at the time you said that is the most cliched thing. Everyone says
playing Monopoly going in. What if this money was real while playing Monopoly?
Right.
But I was probably goofing on Mike, but Mike, we've been playing since junior high school, role-playing games. And when I think back of some of these adventures, I don't remember sitting at the table eating Funyuns and rolling dice. I remember like full on, like,
as if it was a movie,
right? Either an animated movie or a live action movie, or at the very least comic book panels. Like I remember one game I played in college out in New Mexico. And when I think of that, I remember the choreographed fights between my friend Kevin's characters and the bad guys, and guys smashing through buildings and buildings collapse, because these were high-powered characters. Then one of the guys flying in and like making a meteor impact. It was, like a cinematic animated movie. And RJ,
like if I had any artistic ability, I would have documented all of this, years later, it's much more expensive to try to go back and pay someone to bring this to life on the page.
So, right. We got 3 people over here that RJ, can you draw at all? I've never seen you.
I could draw some, but not enough so that it takes me a good 2 days to get a picture that I actually like.
Yeah, well, I could spend 2 days on it and it's still gonna look like crap. So I just bang it out. Like I'll get like a couple of images that I could send to Renzo. This is kind of how I want the character to look. Mike, me and you used to draw a lot as a kid. Have you?
Right. It's funny. I was thinking about that because I had 2 friends when I in my elementary school who were real good artists when they were young. So I always was embarrassed to draw because I always was next to someone who was quite good, and I'm trying to learn, but I don't know if they just had natural talent or just developed it earlier. And I remember they would constantly critique my drawing.
I remember sitting in your house was being fixed upstairs, and we were sitting on the upstairs landing, and it was all like sheetrock and unfinished, and we were just sitting on the ground drawing. I forget who I was, and I remember one of your friends. He had red hair. I can't remember his name. But he said, "Those feet are too big."
Right.
And I'm like, "Dude, I'm 7."
Right. I remember when I was so used to them critiquing my bad art that you would show me a drawing that you did, and I was like, "Wow, that's really good." But I thought I had to point out anything that I thought didn't look exactly, proportional or correct, and I couldn't draw myself. He's like, I don't need the criticism. Do you like it? And it was funny that I was a critic and I sucked. I was worse than you were a better drawer than I was.
I wish I kept it up. And I had Mike and I went to 2 different schools, but after school we would beat up at the comic store. But at school, I had a friend Carl and a friend Sean, and these guys, like, no joke, they could. I know Sean does like fine art now. I don't know what Carl does, but these guys were like talented, and I was like embarrassed to show my drawings, and I made up.
I quit.
RJ, you're gonna laugh at this. I made up a superhero team in 6th grade called the Executioners. They're so bad, and they were basically named after their weapons. So it was like sword, axe, battle axe, mace, but they all had white executioner hoods. So, planned because I couldn't draw, so that was just easy to draw. But I didn't know, and they were just like, "We got to fix this," and they redrew them for me and everything like that. And I was so mad. I'm like, "Where's the hoods?" They're like,
I didn't have a guy with a clan hood, but I probably had the worst name ever. My first character that I made was supposed to be an alien from another planet, so I wanted his name not to sound like it was a name you'd find on Earth, and his mom Celipia. And he had a brother Helixipia. I don't know why I remember that. That's like 3rd grade.
Did it mean anything?
No. I thought it just didn't sound like an Earth name.
Yeah. Celipia. Yeah. Thank God.
And my first supergroup was the Power Men. I thought of that. That was me. And my first character was Crime Hunter.
There you go. RJ, do you remember like any of your first characters? Like, did you do this kind of stuff as a kid?
Yeah, but my stories were probably they're more fantasy and also Star Trek.
Okay. I was always making up superheroes, but the Executioners. Oh God, I wish I had that drawing. Right. It's basically, it looks like one guy had a rope. He was like the hangman. What was I thinking? This other group, they were the Nazis. What? It was so bad.
I had a character, Iron Ball.
I remember Iron Ball, and he had bull horns.
He had a square head, horns, one eye, and the funny thing is, his hands were iron balls. But at the time, I didn't think that I didn't create it so that he could transform them into hands. So I don't know how he could pick up anything. Like bowling balls for hands. I recently made him using AI, and I was like, oh, I wish I could have drawn like this, when I was a kid, and I made him look a little bit more less stupid.
I'm trying to think of some. I know because I started making up superheroes back then, and I actually still have some. Like I reworked them and redid them like as we get older and older and older. But I still like I remember I had a superhero named Nimbus because you're in science class and Nimbus is cumulonimbus is a storm cloud, so he was like a guy who could do storm powers. But his costume was like a direct ripoff of Talisman from the X-Men, from Alpha Flight, the girl, Shaman's daughter. So just picture, basically a girl superhero. I don't know what we were doing back then, but it was fun.
One of the characters I came up with was Oil Slick.
I remember Oil Slick.
And I still think that's decent. Like it's a semi-original, I guess. More so than Crime Hunter.
Yeah, Crime Hunter. Two things. RJ, I keep feeling bad talking about like growing up playing Dungeons and Dragons when RJ, you never played. He's right.
Yeah, no, I've watched plenty of games, but I never played.
Yeah.
Well, I played the online version, but that was
Mike. His older brother wouldn't let him play, so he just had to watch them play Dungeons and Dragons. That is like, yeah. I just picture RJ just sitting there with like a ball and a baseball bat, and it's raining out, But I remember one day riding my bike to your house, and your two older brothers and their friends were playing Dungeons and Dragons. That's how I heard of Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
And I remember I was with a friend. I can't remember who I was with, but it was like, you know how little kids are. You're best friends with somebody for like a summer, and then you never see him again. And we went to your house, and I remember they were in the midst of a battle, and one of your brother's friends was running the campaign, and your two brothers were like, one of them was drawing the map as they went along, and another one was firing arrows. And I remember he was crossing off the arrows and erasing them. And what are you doing? And he was explaining this to me. And my friend was like polite. And then he's like, let's go. I was like, all right, we got to go. He was like, that was like the gayest shit I've ever seen. I'm like, and I was like, that was fascinating. Like I went and I told my other friends that we chipped in. We bought the D&D Red Book, and we were playing. We didn't even read the rules. We would just open it up and roll the dice. It was.
I remember when we were given my brother was given the first rule book. It was like the paperback one. It's like before they came out with the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Player's Handbook. It was actually a softback book. We still have that.
Oh, cool!
And I found it up. It's in the attic with all my with all my with all the books that came later. But I remember having a sleepover one night. I think it was like 6th grade or something, and we made a dungeon using oak tag. Like the big, and we did this giant dungeon. And I think we played in we had a camper that we had opened up in the driveway, and I remember playing till like a marathon session till like 3 a.m. With nothing but like very innocent old snacks, popcorn and soda, and so it was like the greatest night,
Yeah.
And that was about as wild as my life would get, even as an adult.
It peaked at 12. It's been downhill ever since. Old Dirty Fatty says, "Why do I like your characters so much?" Who are you talking? RJ, because RJ's characters are awesome. I don't want to flatter myself, say my character, but I like my characters, and I know Mike's characters. So. Old Dirty Fatty, who are you addressing? And then here's your combo. Bring up your campaign, Thunder Zone Comics Strike Back. But first, how bizarre is this that you're making comics with Dan Sen, who is also a guy who came to our comic book stores?
Right, yeah. Dan and Cam were Pulp regulars. The Incredible Pulp was the name of the comic book store, and that's where I know Cam and Dan from. And Dan's been putting out independent comics like forever. Like
I think he said 22 years the last time.
Yeah, like way before like the current trend. He was doing it. I think when you had to print up books, it was a lot more expensive. Before you could print on demand and all that.
Right. Yeah. He would print up and then hope he sold them all.
Right. And it was a lot more expensive. To do, I guess technology has allowed people to, put out, books much more. He really took a chance back then, right? You don't know if you're going to get stuck with these books, or you got to go to conventions and hope people show interest or whatever. But he's been doing it forever.
You told me that. Well, RJ, have you heard of Argo Comics and Argo 5?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, Dan Sen's been making Argo comics, like I'm not even joking, like 22 years.
I think he's getting close to issue 50 with the main title.
Right. Argo 5 is his main title, right?
Right. And, for an independent superhero book to reach 50, Marvel can't do it these days. They can't do everything at
Yeah, that's true. That's true. No reboots every 3 months.
Right, right.
But I lost touch with Dan. And I moved out west, came back, and then I went to a comic convention, and he was like, John, you know, he had his booth, he was selling his comics. I was like, oh my God, you're still doing this? Like he started before I left.
And because he's been doing it so long, he's been able to network with so many like artists and colorists and and inkers. So he knows quite a few people in the biz.
Right. A lot of people come on my channel. They're like, "Oh, Dan, I know Dan," but
he's doing a book in this campaign called Nature Man, and the cover is by a guy who worked for Marvel and DC. I think it's probably one of the best covers they've had in forever. It really looks tremendous, and I just look like it's the kind of book. It's the kind of cover that I would notice if I was at a comic book store, and he's using some for the Nature Man. He's using characters that were Golden Age characters that are now public domain. And just if you ever get a chance to check out the cover for the latest Nature Man, when I saw that cover, I was like, this guy's got to be working for the big guys because it's that good,
Yeah. So Dan has Argo Comics, which is like his own characters and his stories, and then Thunder Zone is like an imprint where he puts out other people's comics. So
right, he said he imagined it like Image, There's that cover I like so much. That's the Stardust, the Super Wizard is a Golden Age character from 1939.
Well, Nature Man is Nature Boy, which was an old character.
Right, Nature Boy is the original Golden Age character, and he grew up to be Nature Man in Dan's comic.
Okay,
and that's the Dart and Kismet are also Golden Age characters.
Okay, so these are other comics that you could get in the campaign. This kind of reminds me of I can't think of the guy's name. RJ, you remember he used to draw the Legion of Superheroes?
Oh, yes. No, I don't remember his name off the top of my head either.
Paul Leahy. Lighty. Oh yeah, you can see this Golden Age.
Right, yeah, that's what he's going for with this book.
Yeah, good. No, so that's Nature Man, and here's your comic right
here.
There
it is. There's Marshall Strong #2, inspired by our first adventures with Marshall Strong with Project Red Cape.
Yep.
And the aftermath is covered mostly sticking to the continuity, probably departs a little bit in some ways. Like I said, I was just kind of flying solo there, but I love that cover by the Elton Tomasi.
Well, if we unlock the Marshall Strong trading card on my campaign, it actually mentions Project Red Cape. So the continuity is pretty. But now, since Project Red Cape was a government program to create superheroes,
right?
I'm being tight-lipped, and I'm sure Mike's going to spoil it all. So get some Marshall Strong comics for spoilers for Heroic Tales.
I have a few moments in there that are directly from you. You're like, no, I made this. Like I said, I made this before I knew you were going to be doing yours, so I hope I haven't. That's a variant cover. There's a moment of it was their first mission out in the field, taking on some of the metahumans that went rogue after the first round of experiments that weren't quite. Instead of creating metahuman heroes, they created metahuman psychopaths.
Well, yeah, spoiler alert, when they made Project Red Cape, they made more villains than they made heroes, and that's Marshall Strong was a military psychologist who did a screening process and then screened people for the program, and that was more successful for
right. Like the first round of experiments, they didn't realize how much the psychological profile of the participants would impact. So they might have been looking for the biggest, the strongest, the smartest, not realizing it's more the psychological makeup that's going to determine whether this.
And they can also start predicting their powers. Like this guy will probably be a charismatic flying guy. You know what I mean? Because
right,
the powers. Yeah. So yeah, there was more failures than than successes, and because of that, the villains were more experienced than the heroes in the early days. And speaking of it, the Argo Comics, this is Dan sending in the chat right here.
Hey, Dan.
Did you shoot that kid? He looks evil. This
this is by the cover is by J.W. Irwin, who did I think he did one of the Nature Man covers.
Okay.
And that was kind of a surprise that he did for us, and that in colored it looks. I love the flames of the car and the Welcome to Argo City. It's kind of just got a lot of. It's not connected to the story, but it looks dramatic. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, it looks good. I mean, obviously, you could say he's got the red, white, and blue. So the tagline I always say he's Captain America, Nick Fury kind of mix. He's the patriotic military hero.
I was thinking today, in the opening moments of using Marshall Strong in your campaign, he almost died to guys with guns on the roof. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
And you said, like we forget how dangerous guns are in the real world.
Yeah.
You better start dodging.
That was advice that I gave to her. I was like, yeah, you may be a superhero, but if the guys come out with automatic weapons, run.
And the funny thing, how long ago was that? That first adventure?
It must have been around 2001 because I don't.
And it's scary to think that like those opening moments and other moments that I can remember, like forgetting it's over 20 years.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I can't remember anything useful or anything that'll make me money, but I can remember.
I do remember in the early days, Marshall Strong didn't realize how powerful he was, and he had a habit of punching the heads off of villains.
Right.
RJ, this patriotic good guy over here has the highest kill count of all my player characters, and he's supposed to be the Captain America.
Remember he put his fist through the guy's chest by accident? I thought he was super strong.
Yeah.
And it turned out he was just mentally strong, but his body was regular. And he punched him, and he said his heart splattered against the far wall.
Here's some interior art. What are the names of these characters? I recognize one of them right there.
Okay, so this is there's the one speaking in the panel above. That's this world's Joseph Turner.
Okay.
And this is a general who's with the military, in charge of the military's end of the project. And if you scroll down, there's Magnum to the right, and that's Deacon Hammer to the left.
Okay.
And if you look closely, there's a guy in armor back there. That's I believe it was Glare. Do you remember?
Okay, so what Mike's talking about is these are player characters that Joseph Turner was my NPC who was like the Xavier that gave everybody the missions and stuff like that. And then Magnum is Paul, who's in the chat. That's his character. Glare is another. He moved to Portland, and we haven't seen him for a while.
Right, Jerry. We see him.
Jerry.
Sometimes we see him on Facebook. Say hi.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is showing up. If you can see Paul's character there, that one looks. The guy drew one of Paul that looks just like him. He went straight Paul. I should bring that up. It's funny because I said, "Oh, this is the guy it's based on," and then he goes, "Okay," and he made him look like Paul in a costume.
And these are other comics in the
right. These are other comics that you can order them all together, or you can order them individually. Those are some of the other books that Dan likes to do, like 4 or 5 books at a time.
It makes the campaign worthwhile. Yeah.
Yeah. So this way, and this is Big House Blues. This is a prison for supervillains, and that I thought you would recognize the name of this guy. I don't know how to pronounce it right. Baphomet.
Oh, Baphomet. That's Baphomet.
Yeah.
RJ, knowing how I am about rules, would Baphomet be a good guy or a bad guy?
Bad guy.
Yeah. But that is a great design. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought of you because I know you know mythology and all the stuff.
Yeah. So Dan's I got his last. The comics come really well put together. I really like the feel of the comics. I got to ask Dan who he goes with for printing, because
this Supercross, this cover here, they had, but this guy's worked for Marvel and DC. The guy who does this guest cover, and I thought that cover came out really cool. This Jerry Hines comic, which takes place in Singapore. That's where Jerry lives, is in Singapore, and I thought that was kind of that character who they're fighting is called the Expatriate, which I thought was a great name. And this is the first issue of Weirdo, one of Dan's more lighthearted books that is making its debut. So so there's a lot to choose from, or you can get everything.
Yeah, and it's a la carte. You can pick up everything. He's got a bundle deal for everything. He's got individual comics,
And also, the back issues are available. So, like, if you get
look at all
Marshall Strong 2, you could pick up Marshall Strong 1. Same with the other books. So if you need to catch up.
Yeah, and
I knew Paul would like that cover.
Like
I
said,
got to get that.
Dan's comics are really well put together. I mean, they feel like legit comics, which is, they are legit comics, but you know what I'm saying.
I know, and I've said it before, but one of the things that, Dan prides himself on, and he should, is fulfillment on time.
Oh my God, he's really good.
Like every time. So, the books are done in advance. So, I think, the only time, they may have been late was like during the pandemic when, you couldn't get printers and stuff. But, he really has made a point of saying, hey, if we're going to be an independent publisher and if people are going to trust, when you back a Kickstarter or you back Indiegogo, you hope for the best, but, Dan's got a perfect track record.
He's got a good track record. He's been doing it for 22 years. He garnered enough of a good reputation to the point. I forget where I was, but like Dan popped in. No, Dan was on my channel. We were talking, and a whole bunch of people were like, "Hey, Dan!" Like previous guests, they all know he's got a good reputation, just justifiably so. So I wanted to ask you, Mike, because RJ, listen to this. He tried to make a tribute. One of the sergeants was Sergeant Bua. And what happened to Sergeant Bua?
Sergeant Bua means a rather gruesome, untimely death. The funny thing about it was I was having one of the, the guards, the guy who works, within the military. I call mine Apex. Because in my world, the government organization the secret government organization that runs it, it's called Apex, and he was supposed to be kind of like an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. He's one of their military guys, and I thought he was just going to be like, there's a scene where I thought he was going to be knocked out. The guard is kind of taken out by the supervillain, and the artist, I guess, went a different way, and he's just gets obliterated. So I think we're going to have in a future issue, maybe we'll have to put Bua back together again. Cyber Mech Bua. The Bua pun.
So he put me in the comic. Like, this will be fun. I can make a recurrent. But the artist just on his own decided to have me like just blown apart by a villain.
Right. I thought he was going to be like, like knocked into the wall and unconscious, and he's kind of blown to bits. So that was I did get a chuckle when I saw that. It did make me think that maybe kind of have a half cyborg, half human Bua character in future issues.
So I always feel so bad talking about role playing games, knowing that RJ never got to play. But me and RJ keep trying to work out that when he comes to New York, we're going to play. So are you down for that, RJ? You going to play? You can?
Oh yeah.
Make up a character. What would now? Okay, given all of the genres, because first off, I'll before we get to that, I just got to point that Mike also introduced me to this game.
Right.
If you remember, I remember sitting at my kitchen table, and you were like, "There's a superhero game. You brought this over," and Do you remember what my first superhero character was called while you were running the game?
Oh, you've told me, and I'm blanking out.
This is how creative I was at 9. He was the Vigilante. And I was so, he had an 18 strength and he had a police radio in his headset and a gun. Oh man, I thought he was so powerful. Yeah, the good time. But RJ, if you were to play, if you were to make it down to New York and Paul and Mike come over, we play, what would you do? Fantasy, superheroes, Gamma World? What would be your genre of choice?
That's hard. Between fantasy and superheroes, I'm not sure. Probably superheroes.
Oh, you would play a superhero game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if they're in the chat, but my friends that I met out here, like Roy, who has Dark Alchemy Labs, and Scott and Dave, they're in the chat a lot. They play, and we play superheroes, and it's funny because we played 3 times and I already killed half the team. Well, I didn't kill them; they made poor decisions. I just rolled dice. They're looking at me like, "Wow, you're harsh." Mike, so you and Paul have probably played with, not probably, you definitely played with me more than anybody, and then Jimmy's another one. Would you say I'm fair? Would you say I'm harsh? Would you say I'm lenient?
Well, I know. I think you're fair. I think if I remember, like,
I'm
like
going to tell an embarrassing story now.
But the tone was that if there's nothing on the line, you got to give players the benefit of the, like you give them a little advantage. But if there's nothing on the line, if death isn't, a real consequence of bad decisions or a battle, then the game loses the tension that makes it fun. Because I've had numerous characters killed. I'm trying to think. Marshall Strong was killed. Who else was killed?
Guys, I know you hear this. You like, John brought characters back. What we play at the roll table is different than what's going to be in the comics. So nobody comes back.
Mr. Impossible was killed.
Mr. Impossible was killed. Yes.
I think the Spartan was killed at one point.
Spartan was killed. Mr. Impossible was killed. Deacon Hammer didn't even get to do anything.
Right, Deacon Hammer was killed inside. I jokingly always blamed Jerry for that, and he always thought I was serious, but I wasn't, because I think he did. He did his character had some light power, but it also affected my guy's vision.
Yeah, he
did
a light flash and you got blinded and you got killed before. I think you just rolled initiative and you never even got to go.
Right. Deacon Hammer lasted, like, I don't think anyone saw what powers he had. He died so quick.
And if you remember, he had a mystery power that you didn't even know that he had.
And I'll never know. Well, he's alive in the comic book, as is Spartan.
In Albuquerque, I had a friend Lance, and we were playing a fan, like they were bad guys, so they were all begging, "Let's be bad guys, let's be bad guys." And I told them, "All right, that's fun, but don't get too caught up, because if you get beat up by a villain, you're in jail for 20 years or whatever." So my friend Lance made up a RJ's gonna be embarrassed, but he was called the Necromancer, and the Necromancer died. He was taken by surprise and died before he even rolled initiative. So he did nothing. And I felt so bad. I was like, all right, you're the Necromancer. So his contingency, he brought himself back from the dead and then died a second time. Do it. So Lance was just like, yeah, this character, you gave me his whole second chance. So that's it.
Do you remember my character Dynamo? That I call Dynamo Sloth?
Yeah, because
he was the slowest character, and everyone would go 2 or 3 times before it was his turn.
Yeah, well, everybody else had heightened agilities and initiative, and your character had normal human reaction time.
But worse, because he was heavy. Remember, because of the he had some kind of carapace or something like that.
My RJ, I was told I went to a D&D convention, Gary Con in Lake Geneva. And I got to meet, like, I have a forum where for like 20 years, it was the only active Villains and Vigilantes forum. And there was guys who were all over, and we all just happened to meet there. So one of the guys said, make up a character and then we'll all play. And I was like, super, like, I don't want to make a powerful character. I don't want to make a munchkin character. So I made him like low powered. And it was Sergeant Stone, who will be in Heroic Tales #2. And I remember he had a basic agility, and we had like 22 people playing. And I'm not joking. It was an hour and a half before I got my one action.
Oh God.
And I rolled the dice and you missed. Okay. And then we went around it was an hour and a half. Okay, you missed again. I was like, this is excruciating. I was like, I'm never playing with a role-playing game with a bunch of people that I don't know ever again. It was the worst. It was nice to meet them, but man, that was 2 hours of just like, okay, this guy's hitting 14 times. This guy's doing this guy. And I got my one action because I'm a slowpoke because I'm made out of stone. And I missed. Okay. And these guys were doing like 6 die 10 because they made up the characters at home. And I'm rolling 1 die 8 with a punch and missing. I'm like, I'm trying. What are the odds? RJ, does this sound like a foreign language to you? Does this make sense?
Oh no, I can follow along fairly
Okay.
well, but playing is a different story.
I really wish you could play. Like we'll make like a mask for you to wear because I would like to record it. We'll put a big shield over your face, like a stick with the shield. So every time, that's another thing. I've been making videos now with RJ for like 2 years. How long have we been doing this?
We're in. I don't know. I think this is episode 70. So
yeah, over a year, and I don't know what RJ looks like, and I don't want to know. It could only be a disappointment at this point. I know RJ, you play board games with your kids. Do you play Dungeons & Dragons or anything with your kids?
No, we play simplistic board games more. Half hour stuff.
I mean, because people watching this, like, have you ever just like went out and played with the group of strangers? Like, I know Meetup was a good resource. You could find D&D game. Right now, it's really easy to find a D&D game. But like, Mike, have you been following everything that's going on with Dungeons & Dragons now? Like, orcs are no longer bad. They're basically.
I saw a YouTube video on how they overhauled D&D to make it kind of woke and sanitized, and it just seemed like, wow. All I could think was it was so much better. Everything that's underground is so much better. There was a time when we played D&D, it wasn't mainstream.
Oh, what?
It was, you didn't know a whole bunch of other people who played,
and you kept it a secret.
Right? It was like nerdy, and you didn't brag about it. But the idea of trying to conform to the political correctness of the day, it just seems like, what's the point? It just seems so embarrassingly lame.
At junior high school, it would like walking in the hallway, you pass each other. It's just like, yeah, tonight we're going to finish that orc adventure, and you were praying nobody heard you talking about it.
And I remember, there was a time the only attention D&D got was when people thought it was satanic or something. They didn't know. It was, for 99% of the people playing, it was just nerd heaven. It had nothing to do with anything untoward.
That's interesting, RJ. I want to ask you this because I know you have a theology degree, right?
No, actually, it's political theory.
Oh, why did I think theology degree? So I mean, but I do know that you're more religious than I. Do you remember that Satanic Panic, and do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I remember it all came around that bad Tom Hanks movie. When the whole thing came out. Yeah. I can remember, some weird stuff going on at the same time, but I never really thought much of it. Like, we had a religious household, but at the same time, my brother playing Dungeons and Dragons, so nobody really batted an eye.
Yeah, because I remember my grandfather scooped up my D&D, my Dungeon Master's Guide with the red Ifrit. It basically looks like Satan on the cover, and he looked at it, and he goes, "What do you learn from this?" You know what I mean? What a
Math.
question. That's what I said, math. And he goes, This is math? You know what I mean? Like, it was the most insane thing to him, you know what I mean? To an old Sicilian guy, you know what I mean? Like,
I guess it's, how you approached it. I mean, we just played good guys, and
right.
I look back, nothing could have been more innocent than, than the way, I guess if I guess it's what you bring to it. If they're
Absolutely.
a group of kids who fantasize about being Satanists or whatever, I guess then Monopoly, they could bring that to Monopoly. You know, like it's what you bring to it, because for us it was just good clean fun.
Right. Like when we played back then, like we were Rangers fighting, the corrupt Duke would try to trick us. That's about as political as it got, or something like that.
Right.
And then we were superheroes, and it was like, okay, you ready? Okay, there's an explosion at the bank. And that was like, now we're beating up a guy dressed up as a caterpillar or something like that. You know what I mean? It was so innocent,
Right.
so fun.
Yeah. Even we played Gamma World, which was post-apocalyptic,
Right.
and it was still innocent fun.
We didn't explore why there was a apocalypse. We just knew that there was like animal people, and
Right. It was just to me, it was always just like an action movie where you're a good guy.
Right.
By the way, I should add. I don't know. I think I told you. After, I don't know if it was 1978 or 79. When I first the game that preceded Gamma World was Metamorphosis Alpha.
Oh,
you never heard of that?
No, I don't remember that.
Metamorphosis Alpha was the forerunner to Gamma World, and Gamma World is essentially Metamorphosis Alpha expanded.
Okay.
Metamorphosis Alpha was a floating empty spaceship in the future, and I held that in my hands because it's expensive now if you can find it. I held it in my hands, and I was at Dave's Hobby Shop in Freeport, and that place looked like
it was the biggest fire hazard in the world.
Right, it looked like Sanford and Son, like the whole.
But it had
where everything was, but the store was hilarious in that it just looked like things that piles of things that were going to fall on you. And I remember holding the rule book, but I didn't know if I wanted to cough up the $7 or $8. It seems a lot of money at the time. And then a week later, I decided to go back and get it, and it was gone. And I finally got it. Now, 2025, I ordered a box set of Gamma World, and inside was Metamorphosis Alpha with the game.
Oh, wow.
Which was like finding treasure in the. But I want to, if anyone played.
No, I didn't know that. It's funny because I keep holding up this. I have about 7 copies of this, because this came out in what, 1982, 1983, and 1982, and look how good it is. This is probably like my 5th copy. These things fell off. I write notes in them and stuff like that because I modify some of the charts. But if I go to a hobby store and I see a copy of this, I still buy them. That's how
I have multiple copies of that as well.
And then like if Dan had a great idea, and I'm so mad. Had we coordinated our campaigns, because I have a Marshall Strong stretch goal card, and Dan was like, if you bought from his campaign and my campaign, you should have got them. I was like, damn it, that's a good idea. Too bad I didn't think of it. But my stretch goal cards have the V&V rules.
Right, that's so cool that have the stats like a baseball card.
And it's funny. I was just talking with Frankie B. Washington earlier today. I got Scott Bizarre's phone number, the guy who owns Villains Vigilantes, and I called him, and he gave me his blessing to do that. And I don't know if I'm going to get sued. I'm like, sue me. I'm not making any money on my comic books. I was going to do it anyway, but I got the blessing. And then 3 days later, guess who I get a call from?
Oh, Jeff D.
Jeff D calls me. He doesn't own it. I said, dude, we went through this already. This is the 2nd time he threatened to sue me. So buy my comic to piss off Jeff D, who is one of the most annoying people on the internet.
Yeah, that's a shame, because we have such good memories about.
I know. Never meet your heroes, RJ. Matter of fact, don't come over, RJ. You might be a jerk.
You'd be very disappointed.
This guy Jeff D, you know what his hobby is? He goes to churches and debates people about evolution.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a video. He sells a video of him arguing with people about evolution, and I'm like, that's what you want to do with your life? I don't know. I don't. It's just like, it's just trolling people. Leave him alone. Whatever.
But he had that case against Scott Bazaar.
Right. He lost. He
And
lost.
that dragged out in court for years. And, it's funny because it can't be talking about how many people worldwide play V&V.
He tried to take over my forum too. I'm like, dude, the only reason why you're suing Scott Bazaar is because my forum kept people interested in V&V for 20 years. And now the one guy that was interested in your game, you got to give me, I got to become an administrator of this forum. I was like, make your own forum. And then he did, and it died. And my forum's still going. So there you go. RJ, I'm not above petty Schadenfreude. Oh, yeah. I don't know. I could talk about bore everybody with our old characters, but I remember your first V&V character. I think, or at least the first one in my game was the Eliminator.
The Eliminator, right? He was the Punisher. The only difference was there was no difference. He wasn't the Punisher, essentially.
Right. And if you remember, right here on the first page of Villain Vigilantes, the rules are that you're playing yourself with superpowers.
Right.
So that should take care of being a supervillain, because if you have a friend who really is a supervillain, why are you hanging? It was kind of judgy. But have you ever played where you played yourself? No.
That wouldn't be. I don't want to be myself.
I don't want to be a guy with a 4 charisma.
I want to be someone cooler.
Yeah, I'm playing a fantasy. RJ, do you want to be yourself in a game? No, I want to be somebody. I'm playing a game because I don't want to be myself.
Because in theory, that means they have your job,
right?
You're like I'd rather give my character a background like he was a Navy SEAL, or he,
Yeah, my character's 12. My character's 12 years old, and he's an altar boy in a Catholic school. There's a great superhero.
Yeah, that part I thought it was a little too like
he can save the world, but he has to be home when the street lights go on and my father whistles.
Yeah, that wasn't appealing to me. The idea of that's like LARPing. Like I was not a fan of LARPing either.
I get RJ. You didn't LARP, huh?
No.
What's funny is I had 2 friends in college. I had a friend back then. They called it the Society of Creative Anachronism. Like nowadays, it's like LARPing. And it was funny because he was this big, handsome guy, and you go to his house and he's making his chainmail armor and he's fixing his sword. Like, what are you doing, Cody? He's like, well, I'm Sir Roland on the weekends, and he was totally into it. Like, I was like, oh wow, here's a guy that does something even nerdier than me, and he's just totally owning it. He wasn't embarrassed by it one bit, And then I worked with this guy in construction. He was my foreman, and we would talk about nerdy stuff. Oh, John plays role-playing games, Dungeons & Dragons. Do you dress up as a wizard and stuff like that? And I'm like, yeah, because if you let them bother you, they're going to tease you. You know how it is. You work blue-collar jobs. If they bother you and they know they got you, they know. So I'm like, yeah, I dress up like a wizard. Yeah, I'm 14th level. What level are you? But the foreman gets up and he shows me a picture. He does Roman Legionnaire reenactments. Wow. This guy's like 6'4". He's got the big crest. He goes, I'm the standard bearer. I have to be there an hour early, and he was totally into it. But he's like the only guy who didn't make fun of me because he's even nerdier than me.
Like, people who you find out that either Civil War reenactors or the big in the Renaissance Fair. Yeah. Remember the Renaissance Fair? Did you ever do that?
I never did it. RJ, you ever go to the Renaissance Fair?
No, I have not. Honestly.
It was very cool because it was, it's all set. It has that, medieval feel, and then they have the human chess where they have a chessboard, and the pieces actually are stuntmen who fight.
Yeah,
with swords. It was a lot of fun. I remember going there, and there was a guy who was like in the stockade thing.
Yeah,
and you pay money to throw apples at him or something or tomatoes or whatever it was. And we're passing by. I thought it was so weird. I guess that's like a medieval attraction, yeah. And they assume you're going to miss. And we're looking at it, and I don't want to throw fruit at a real person. That even if you win, you'll probably feel bad. And you go by, they start insulting you. And the guy goes, "Well, you're too much of a girly man to do it." And you're like, "What? You're afraid?" So I was okay. Me and my friend both did it, and it was like expensive. It was like, $5 to throw an apple or whatever. My friend throws, and he winds up, and he not only missed, he didn't even hit the board that was behind the guy, went sailing over. And I'm no good at baseball, but I throw a perfect strike. The guy's taunting me, laughing at me. I hit him right between the eyes, like right here. And he just looked sad. I thought he was going to say, like start mocking me and say, lucky throw. I dare you to do it again. You just said, and I was like, this is the worst. I'm not doing this anymore. But I was never good at baseball. I don't know how.
Yeah, the one lucky shot was at the poor guy who was.
And he just looked at me like I was the first person to hit him in years. It was the strangest feeling.
When I lived in Albuquerque, Albuquerque had sunny days, 320 days a year. So there was always the Renaissance Fair. And not only that, like the Renaissance Fair, like kind of went there in the off season, and these people like lived like that. Oh, okay, it's time to tour again. So it was always there. And the same guy who was the necromancer, he was like, we should all dress up like barbarians and just show up in the middle of the night and just raid the Renaissance Fair. Just
barbarians invading.
Just pick up the women and run away. You guys want to live like the Dark Ages? This is what it was really like. Then of course we couldn't pick up those women. And Old Dirty Fatty takes umbrage to the SCA is not LARPing. I don't know the difference, so I'll take your word for it. Letting a person take over could be a persona take over could be messy. Yep. I don't want to become that mask necessarily, but a lot of things is it's a tool. It can be fun. Don't want to become the mask necessarily. Okay, I get what you're saying. And then we got Thunder Zone Comics, and that's all the chat.
Well, John, you know what I just thought of? You had a great comeback once. You said someone at work, when you told them you were going to a Comic-Con,
right?
And he was laughing at you. Oh, you're going to dress up as Superman? And you said, no, I don't really have the physique, but he was wearing he said, he's like, oh, you're a superhero, and he was wearing a Giants jersey,
right?
He said, you said. Because he said something about you pretending, and he said, I didn't know you were on the Giants. You're on the Giants?
Yeah, I said, look at you all dressed up.
Why are you wearing that? Why are you wearing a jersey? That jersey is to play football. You don't play football.
I said, you're dressed up making fun of me for dressing up as my
right. If you're into sports or you're into gaming, it's just it's you could see that there's a part of it. No one on that team knows you. You're not part of the team. You don't get to wear, you don't need to be wearing a jersey. You're not wearing football equipment. No one on that team would recognize you, right. And yet you feel a connection.
Yeah, this is how little I know about sports. But he had Peyton Manning. I don't even know what team Peyton Manning was on, but he had Peyton Manning jersey on. He was always talking about that. I'm like, I said, you're doing the same thing that I'm doing, and you're making fun of me. We're no different. And I said, and you play fantasy football. I said, that's Dungeons & Dragons for people who can't play football, and then I made the joke, if I can't shoot a fireball at fantasy football, then I don't want to play. Right. Old Dirty Fatty says, you can't end up in a hospital from LARPing. You can if Mike hits you in the face with an apple.
Right there.
A knowledgeable sports fan. Yeah. Well, I always said like a nerd is somebody that's really into something, like, but like I have a friend that's into making beer. He's a beer nerd. Like you could talk to him about the ins and outs of beer and everything, and it's really interesting. I like that. My brother Mike knows my older brother. He's a motorcycle nerd. He could talk to the ins and outs of motorcycles. My little brother's like music. He could like not so much bands and stuff like that, but like how to play an instrument, toners and pedals and dials and thermostats and everything like that. RJ, I know you're a comic book nerd, but what like building your house nerd? Like what other stuff would you be really into that you?
It's sort of like I'm not really sure what they call it anymore, but it's like homesteading, I guess.
Yeah, homestead. And I fed like all of these classic texts, like you said you learned them in Greek and things like that.
Oh yeah, that was back in the day.
Yeah, like for those of you who don't know, RJ makes videos every Saturday, and they're very serious and they're very thoughtful. The one you made 2 weeks ago, I even commented that you made me think a lot. But that's the kind of nerding I like, because you'll read, Marcus Aurelius and quote it and apply it to comic books and things like that. I find that fascinating. I pretend to know as much about that. I mean, I know Greek mythology, but not the way you know the primary text. Oh yeah, Marcus knows about sports. Yeah, every once in a while, Marcus and he'll talk sports, and I'm like, I turn into my wife when I talk comic books. She's not interested. My poor partner Willie, who's probably not watching this, but this poor guy hears me talk about comic books 8 hours a day. Poor guy. What the guys at work, Mike? Do they know about you making comics? Do they encourage it?
Well, it's interesting. There's one of my friends at work, Dave, is big comic book guy, and like yourself, he is a Fantastic Four aficionado. And he's always talking about the money he spends on comic books that he doesn't let his wife know about. Like ordering the the issues he's always wanted, but it probably doesn't know if it's the wisest way to spend your money. If they would take a vote, it would be 50. But he's been very encouraging and very excited that the issue number 2 is finally coming out. By the way, he's the one who got me the one of the there was the book, the Kirby book. You see that hardcover book about Jack Kirby's life that's told in comic book. It's a biography told in comic book form.
Oh, okay.
Kirby. And then they just came out. They came out with one about Stan Lee.
Oh, send me the link. I heard about this and then I forgot about it.
Yeah, I didn't know how according to this biography, Jack Kirby was really ripped off in terms of he didn't get credit for a lot of the ideas that were his, that were all given. That Stan Lee was the face of the company,
right?
And but it sounds like I guess he had a successful career, but almost like the early rock and rollers, like all those guys who didn't own the rights to their own music, right, and they all got ripped off. It sounded like there was a lot of that going on. It seems like if you're a pioneer, you probably got screwed.
Like you could look at the classic Fantastic Four, like Kirby and Stan Lee lasted 101 issues, which was incredible. And everybody, somewhere around, I'm going to say issue 70, you could just tell that Kirby stopped throwing in new ideas. They were always retreading old villains and, okay, let's bring back this guy again. And Kirby was like, I'm not getting paid for this. I'm not giving my new ideas anymore.
It was also amazing how hardworking he was. Like, and those, like, just the work ethic was unbelievable, and no sense of entitlement. Like, he saw himself almost like roll up his sleeves, blue collar worker, and
that famous.
I want to put food on the table. Yeah.
Right. My job is I sell comics. When people asked him what his job was, not I write comics, not I draw comics, not I sell comics. So we were talking about guys at work. The guys on my job have been incredibly RJ. You're self-employed, right? You don't have a
yeah. I just work from home.
Oh yeah. So so nobody. You don't have coworkers that be like, do you make comic books or anything? Or do you have friends that encourage you, or they think you're crazy?
No, I pretty much keep to myself. The only guys that talk to you about comic books are you and the guys on the line online here.
Okay, because the guys at work, I find this, Mike, you probably know it, that like the average blue collar guy loves comic books.
Well, there's like some of the guys are like familiar, of course, with like the X-Men and
right and
the movies and stuff.
Like, oh man, I used to love Green Lantern, and then like I'm not joking. Out of like every 30 guys I talk to about this, 1 or 2 of them will go, do they still make comics?
Right.
It's so freaking sad. But like, I had to overprint my comic, and I brought like a box to work, and all the guys were like, because they didn't want to they don't understand crowdfunding and stuff like that. So they bought physical copies for me, and then they set up the shanty at work, and I had a signing. They were, nice. It was really nice. But just today, this is a funny story. This is why I brought this back. I'm on a new job now, so this is like my third week at a new job, and there's like 80 guys, and like, oh, you're the one that's making the comic books, and the same thing. It's all over again. That's so cool. So one guy, we were standing around. This guy's like, oh yeah, he makes a comic, and the guy, he's like, oh okay. I'm like, you're not into comics? He goes, nah, I'm into porn. I was shaking his hand. I'm like, thank God I got gloves on. I was like, oh, you watch a lot of porn? He goes, no, I make it. And I'm like, he goes, you want to see my movies? I'm like, are you in them? But yeah, I said, God, no. I think he got annoyed by that. I'm like, that's the last thing I wanted to see.
Gross.
So everybody's got their hobbies, RJ. Homemade
Well,
porn.
speaking of which, I got to bounce because I have my live stream starts in 2 minutes, 1 minute actually.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Nice to meet you, Mike.
Good talking to you.
Do you want to keep talking, Mike, or do you?
I got a few minutes if you want to.
Okay. So, anything you?
I was going to say, how's your campaign going? Are you already thinking? Are you already planning past issue 2?
Yes. For the I broke 2,000 today. My campaign's going slower. I'm only competing against myself, but like my first campaign, I did 2,000 in like the first weekend. You know what I mean? Now I'm on my second week, so I hope things pick up. Like if I do a comic a day, a sale a day throughout the campaign, I'll match what I did last time. So I would really like, because what we're doing now is raising the funds for the next issue. This issue is paid for by the last issue. The first issue I paid out of pocket. That's the way I'm working it. I would like to do Heroic Tales 3. The script is plotted out, and I just changed a major thing because people reacted really well to King Fu, so I amped up his role. But what I do is I want to take the Patriarch and give him issue number 1. So my next campaign, I would like to do Patriarch number 1, maybe at the same time with Heroic Tales 3. RJ says he's finished with a lot of his, not RJ, Renzo said he's finished with a lot of his commitments, so we could probably speed it up. So issue 1 of the Patriarch will be his origin. So I had that planned, that the third appearance of the Patriarch tell his origin, but if I'm going to give him his own comic, I'm expanding it. You know,
right.
It's going to be a 20-page story. Now it could be like a 40-page story of the origin.
These are all like my Marshall Strong, like the first story arc of Marshall Strong, or at least a good chunk of it, is based on our, first adventures way back when. But the Patriarch and Mary Sue, they're not from that.
Right.
They're new creations.
The reason why I did that was matter of fact, I made when you were helping me move is when I came up with the idea of the Patriarch. If you remember, we were in the moving van together, and I was like, what would piss off all these crazy lefties if I make a superhero called the Patriarch? And you were laughing, and then
I thought it was a great name, especially considering the political climate of
right.
The time,
And then I started to realize 2 things: I liked the character, I liked the concept, and then making a character out of spite, it doesn't last. That's like making a topical joke. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's funny right then and there, but 5 years later, that political satire movie that you made is dated. So I kind of evolved it. But I didn't think I had the right to use any of your characters. You know what I mean? Like when Heroic Tales was like almost finished with production, Paul got mad that I didn't put Magnum in it.
Well, yeah, for me, thinking about it, it's kind of like, this is almost like it's more of a rare opportunity that might not have existed if technology hadn't changed. Where when we were reading comics in 1980, good luck putting out your own book. So to me, it's not like I have no grand illusions about a movie deal, a TV deal.
Right. Yeah.
For me, it's just fun. It's fun seeing your character out there, and the other thing is just the creative part of it, where like you said, you made a major change in the thing. Those moments are they feel something exciting when you get hit with creativity and ideas, and then you see it come to life.
Yeah,
when,
it is.
you know, it's like there's two parts of it. One is when ideas start hitting you, and then you start refining them, and then as you work with them, things that you never would have thought of just in advance start to hit you as you write it down, and then you get the thrill of seeing the artist run with it, especially if you have, you know, a real good artist, and then you see it, what was in your head, you now see on the page. You know,
I tell you, it was a kick to see the art. It was a kick to see the coloring, but when it was lettered, oh my God,
right.
that was the great. I mean, the next best thing was having the comic, but something about it's art, it's drawn, it's colored, now it's lettered, like just as a file on the. I was like, oh my God, you know. Paul He says, all good. You can't put someone more. Paul is Magnum. Magnum is one of probably the most powerful character superhero in my world. Yeah, he is vastly powerful, and that's gonna play in the story. If I could get to around Heroic Tale 7, I kind of went and introduced Marshall Strong, Magnum, and all these guys as a team.
I got to tell Paul, Magnum. So I know I got Paul back in my comic because Magnum plays one of the main role in issue 2 of Marshall Strong. The issue that's now on the Kickstarter features Magnum. His look is slightly different. When I had him made, it's very similar. I had forgotten about the the spheres that he's
Magnum control. He's basically like the Hulk and Magneto smushed together, and he has these steel balls that Paul came up with, so he magnetized them, and that's how he will fly. Like he'll pull himself along and fly because he's control, and then he'll like pull them off and like
right and at ridiculous speeds.
Right.
So I think I did mostly capture the look. He's not quite as blown up, but I think having played, gamed with you and Paul and Jimmy so many times, I think I nailed the personality of Magnum in the game. He also shine.
Your story is set like 15 years prior to my to Heroic Tales, so any differences can be explained by that.
Right, but I guess no matter how much he evolved, Paul played that character a little different than he would play like one of his other characters. Who was his other character? What was the one who could animate things? What was it?
Paul had a couple of characters. He had a Flux, who was a shape changer. I don't know if you ever played with Flux. And then he had this guy named Channel who could
Channel was the one. So like Magnum had a very specific personality. I don't want to give anything away. And I thought I had moments to capture Magnum's not only power but his personality. And I thought it was a good contrast to Marshall Strong, who's very different personality than Magnum, and a little more tightly wound. I don't know how to describe it, but it plays out well in the as a foil for each other.
One thing I wanted to talk about, too bad RJ left, was growing up. You were into DC,
yes,
and I was into Marvel, and I remember that was like a West Side Story thing. You know what I mean? Like you had your gang.
I started off as a Marvel guy.
Right.
The first comic I remember getting regularly, I didn't say that well, because the first comic I consider my starting collecting was John Carter, Warlord of Mars Annual 1. But the first one
That's the first comic that you bought, because you have two older brothers. I
had gotten comics before, but that's
same with me. I had two older brothers. There was always comics in my house.
And we were in, that was when I say on the page, we were in Denver, Colorado for it was like the Encountering Family, one of the like Christian kind of family things. And in the convention center, there was a spinning rack. And I remember asking if I could, get a comic, and my brother got a comic. And I thought I was so clever because I got an annual, which was twice as big. And it's funny. It's like, 50 cents versus 30 cents for a regular comic.
Right.
And that it was an adaptation of one of the novels, the John Carter novels, and it was by Roy Thomas, and adapting the original novel. And then my brother Kevin got a Invaders comic book, which was also by Roy Thomas.
Right.
And I got to meet Roy Thomas at MegaCon in Florida, and I got to tell him about that. It was very cool to tell him that I had no idea that all the comics I liked as a kid were all written by the same guy. I thought they were just written by Marvel,
Yeah.
And I think at some point I was reluctant to try DC at first because they seemed a little sillier. But then I think I got into Justice League with the death of Mr. Terrific. I don't know if you remember that one. And a Green Lantern, and then Justice, and then I was hooked. And it's funny, over the years I kind of got more into DC than Marvel, but I still like both. But I think like when I think back, like Legion of Superheroes, Vigilante, probably my best memories. That and All-Star Squadron.
Yeah, I remember we went on a camping trip as kids, and I brought a stack of comics. You brought a stack of comics, and you brought like the Legion of Superheroes, like just before the Great Darkness saga, the Great Darkness, and then like the current issue, which was like 2 issues after. And I remember, I guess I'm reading these, but I remember making fun of you, Bouncing Boy, Lightning Lad,
right.
And you said, yeah, those are the names. Get over it. These are great comics.
Right. The final issue of the Great Darkness saga.
Yeah.
That's still like whenever I think of like my favorite comic memories, like I go back to the same like 6 books.
Yeah.
And that's always one of them. I remember picking that one up, and I hadn't gotten the rest of the Darkness saga. Like I got that double issue because the cover was so cool. And then I read that, not having read, that was the conclusion.
Right.
And I hadn't read, and I still loved it and read it multiple times.
I don't know how many times like that one panel of them all shooting rays at Darkseid.
Right.
And like each Legionnaire had their own signature energy blast. And,
right.
And was it Ultra Boy? Astound this stone face.
That was Karate Kid, and yeah, that was. I did that in Marshall Strong 1. Secret Shogun says he's trying to get basically tell Marshall Strong, I'll kill you, or maybe you could join us. And he has like the what was it? The it's like the evil. I'm blanking out here. What was it? King Arthur's Cup. He was
Black Grail.
The Black Grail. Right. I don't know why it eluded me. And he says he said, one sip, Marshall, it will open your eyes. And then Kid Nemesis, who you think is kind of, he makes the comeback saying, open this, you mummified freak. And that was my homage to the Great Darkness saga with Astound This Stone Face. And that was that Karate Kid who gets like obliterated, on the Darkseid's force field kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a great comic. I still think of it.
Yeah, so good. That Legion run is, and what came after that is so like it's almost. I feel sometimes sad, like the mainstream. There's still some excellent writers out there that but I feel like the art of storytelling, other than a few gifted individuals who are left, is like somehow comic books lost it because there were so many good books that I feel like that I've gone into comic book shops just to randomly pick up something and left empty-handed.
Yep.
And in the past, I would have gone into a comic book store and had to make some hard choices because I can't get everything, and I would say, oh, but I want this and I want this. And now, some of the stuff is, and some of my friends who still collect current stuff, have showed me some of the stuff, and it's not fun, and it gets political, and it also seems like one of the things that's lost is I got the feeling that the people who wrote the issues in the past grew up on comics and knew Marvel and DC's history inside out.
And they loved it.
And you can tell that not all, there's still some good writers, but there are many writers who did not grow up on comics. They're not particularly interested in whatever history they didn't read anyway. And it's not like they're trying to learn it, you know? Yeah. And I think that they had something good going, you know, and you could feel it in books like The Legion that had very long histories with so many characters. And there was so much rich history that the writer could pull from, you know, and then develop.
And not only that, these guys lasted for like 3 or 4 years on a title.
Right.
They had time to develop. I was just talking with Frankie B. Washington early. Like they don't have long runs anymore.
Right.
You know? Yeah. Yeah. You can't decide between the X-Men Icarus or the DC fart books. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the Harley Quinn Fartacular is on the shelves right now. Not even a joke. It's a scratch and sniff. I'm not even joking.
Okay, that's
and then next month is Nothing But BUTT Nightwing, and it's him like looking over his shoulder with who are these comics for? You know, this is supposed to be a guy who basically you steal a TV, Nightwing shows up and beats you up and puts you in jail. That's, you know what I mean?
I'd be so curious. You know, we can't know how much books sell anymore because, you know, that information is no longer available since, you know, Diamond is no longer the exclusive distributor, and the Diamond's kind of going under now, right? Anyway,
right, yeah.
But I'd be so curious to know that some of these books that really got away from what made the books popular in the first place, I get the feeling that the numbers are very, very small now. I could be wrong, but I get the feeling that I don't think anything is selling anywhere, you know, near what they used to. And I'd be so curious to know these writers that don't appreciate the history of these characters. Is that reflected in the sales? And I bet it is, because I could be wrong, but I can't see these books selling.
The way I look at it is that ship has sailed, and
right. It's like that was I guess a hobby from a lot, you know, that was part of a time that's now over. But now, fortunately, there's you know, books like yours. Books like people, you can find a lot of interesting stuff out there. You know, the hard part is hearing about it,
right?
Because, you know, we don't have the vehicle.
Just look at one point, you had comic books literally everywhere,
right?
You know, at the spinner racks, you know, at the drugstores, you know, at the stationery stores, everywhere you turned there was comic books. And then the first big mistake was getting rid of the newsstands, and you had to go to, like I used to say, that nobody just wakes up and be like, you know what, I'm gonna all of a sudden go to a comic book store and get involved in a hobby that I'm not interested. Like you had you had to get somebody, you know, out. And now I'm gonna turn on the computer and Google something and see if there's a comic book that I could pre-order right now and get 4 months from now.
Right,
you know,
because
the impulse buy is gone.
You know, I don't know what the potential my book has to, you know, sell. I hope people enjoyed it when they read. I got some positive feedback, but I always, somewhere there's someone who would love my book or love your book, and they'll never hear of it, you know, because I can't advertise on.
Right. Yeah, I know. I enjoyed your book. I know my book is good. Second issue is 100 times better. I know, like you said, that this is somebody's favorite superhero book, and that I just can't get it into their hands. I just don't know how. And I'm open to anybody who has a good suggestion. Like, I want to go to comic conventions. Like, that would be great. Me and you, Mike, grab your book, grab my.
Oh, yeah. It seems like, you know, that's a fun thing to do, especially something if it was big. Although, you know, like you could see, trying to sell a book that way would be exhausting, you know, like, but it would be nice to get to meet people, especially people who, you know, who read the book, get feedback, you know. I remember when I would go to comic conventions, I would always go to the indie press just because, you know, I always thought, you know, I could be stumble upon something I never would have heard of. but it's tough. It's like sometimes I remember going to a comic book convention a couple of days in a row on a weekend, and thought I saw everything, and then discovered something I enjoyed on the second day, and I said, "Wow, it's like finding the needle in the haystack. You really, it's hard to get noticed."
I just remember this. You also took me to my first comic convention.
Oh, really? I'm trying to think. Like, was that the one that used to be at the Penn Plaza or something?
Yeah. I couldn't believe it, but we took the Long Island Railroad to Penn Station to the Penn Hotel, and if you remember, we met Walt Simonson and John Byrne.
Yes. Do you remember John Byrne? Like, you were getting his autograph, and you had money in your hand. I think he thought you were going to hand it to him.
He was ignoring me. He was ignoring me. So I embarrassing me telling this story. I took $10 out and I went like this, and I just made like a big show of it. And then he took and then I put the money back in my pocket and left because I was annoyed. But he was literally skipping over me. I was like a little kid,
Right. No, you were young. It's funny that
I hustled John Byrne.
I still say he's I think when I think of my three favorite artists over the years, it was John Byrne, George Perez, and Keith Giffen. Until Giffen lost his mind, when he changed his style where it wasn't what he was doing in the Legion anymore. Like he got that kind of loose, crazy style.
I remember Keith Giffen in those Deluxe Comics Thunder Agents. He did Lightning, and I've had those comics since the 80s, and I finally just read those Lightning stories because the art was so bad that I couldn't read. And I'm like, this is stupid. I got these comics because George Perez did it, one story. I forget who else did another story. But I was like, I couldn't read his art was so bad. And I
remember what he did, Trencher?
Yep. Yeah.
And it was almost abstract, or I don't even know how to describe it.
It was like Mobius Frank Miller style Keith Giffen.
Right. I
love Trencher.
But I think of his classic stuff, with the Legion, and to me that was like so perfect. I thought but I could see how it would be exhausting. I always worry about the guys who are very detailed. If it just becomes so labor intensive that they, it must be a lot faster to be less.
Right.
Less detailed.
Artists will change their style to be quicker. I think John Byrne, when he Namor, he did that. I figure it was with the dots. He used like special paper that if you wet it, it made.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Right.
Zipatone, I think, or something like that. And then later on, he stopped doing it because it took too long. And people were like outraged,
We want the Zipatone. By the way, that I texted you a picture. Any chance you could put that up? That was it was going to be a variant cover, but it kind of got done too late. And this was like a preliminary.
Okay, I gotta put it on Twitter because it came to my phone, and my phone is not.
Yeah. I didn't know how to send you something. I guess I don't know. I wanted to show Paul this.
Okay, so Marcus, I'm going to send you a message. It's just so that I can put it on Twitter. So Marcus is watching, so he understands what I'm talking about. There you go, and I'll put this up. So what are we looking at?
This was going to be a variant cover, which I might still use. But this was when the artist Elton Tomasi, who done so much wonderful work for me. I forgot how it came up, but I mentioned that Paul noticed that Magnum had like a kind of similar look to him, with the widow's peak, and I sent him a picture, and then he basically drew Magnum pretty much as Paul, if you see it. So I thought it was a cool picture of these are the three characters that are featured in issue 2, featured the most, Marshall, Deacon Hammer, and Magnum. And you can see Magnum is a little bit more human-sized. In the book, he's actually bigger than this. Right. But not as big as your
artist interpretation, that's.
But this is Paul LARPing, as Magnum. You know, so,
Yeah, it does. It looks just like him if you can make it big. And that's Deacon Hammer, the character that died
right,
before he got to do anything.
right. So Deacon Hammer gets to shine in issue 2, and there's Marshall looking kind of tough in the front.
I don't know if you remember, but one of the last times you played with Mike hasn't played. Mike's got young kids. He doesn't play as much. But one of the last times that you played as Marshall Strong, don't you remember that there was a break-in at the headquarters of there's this game comes with a shield organization called Chess.
Right.
So when I started making up the comic book, I dismantled Chess and starting a new organization because I didn't want to use stuff from here and have Jeff D sue me. So I have a new organization. But the Chess headquarters got broken and the Deacon Hammond body was stolen.
Yes, I remember that.
We never finished that adventure. So Paul says that he's good looking. Marcus says Giffen aped a French artist for Trencher. Yes, I remember that. What's Twitter? I can't call it X. I did name it.
I did calling it X, but I always feel like
Duotone had a liquid activator, and Marcus says it caused cancer. Oh, geez, I didn't know that.
Jeez.
You could still get it from Japan, but it's very expensive. Speaking of LARP, how's the cosplay cover going? I don't know if you know Crenshaw. Crenshaw looks like the patriarch, so I mailed him a shirt, and he understands the assignment that he's gonna do a couple of superhero poses. He's gonna make it like as high resolution as possible, and we'll make it. But I got to talk to Luke Stone is making the Martina Marcoda cosplay cover, so I kind of forgot about it. I'll ask him tomorrow. It's too late to message him. He's got kids. I'm not gonna go bust his chops about that. But yeah, that's. Did you see on my campaign? I got a cosplay cover.
Oh, I saw that. I didn't know that was. Is that happening? Is that?
Martina Marcoda was one of my earliest guests. She was like 9 months pregnant when she was on my channel, and she had a comic called Lady Alchemy. So she came on my channel. We talked. We still talk. We still chit chat. Message to each other every once in a while. And I was like, hey, let me send you a shirt. Would you post? And I was just thinking, hey, I'll use pictures of people to sell the shirts.
Right.
She's a good looking girl. She looks awesome. And people like, you got to make a cosplay cover of that. So then I messaged her back. I was like, what do you? So she did a couple of poses, and we'll see how that works out.
Wow.
But I already sold one, so I have to make it. Hey, Shadowpunk is here. How you doing, Shadowpunk? What? There was something else I was going to ask you, but I can't remember now. Geez. So Mike, he took me to my first comic convention. He got me into DC Comics. I remember you sold me on Infinity Incorporated. You were into that way before I was.
Right. It's funny. I enjoy everything. I felt like they were on fire there for a while with those comics. And Roy Thomas was. I didn't realize how many of the books that I enjoyed were all him, and it was cool that I got when I met him. I got to tell him, like, I started going through all the books I like, and I said, oh, I realized it was all you, but I didn't realize it till later, because as a kid, I don't think when I was first started out, I don't think
I didn't pay attention to names. I think the first name I started to notice was John Byrne, like those classic X-Men. I started following him, but writers I didn't really follow along at all around them.
I think there was a time when comics were usually good enough that you could just follow the character or the group.
Yep.
And one run wouldn't. Sometimes not everyone lives up to the hype, but usually it could change hands and it would just go into the hands of another good author.
Right. Like the Avengers. I started collecting the Avengers around 150, and you could go from X-Men. You could go from Avengers 150 to like 220, and it's just awesome. And you went from like Len Wein to I think Jim Shooter did a couple, Marv Wolfman, but I didn't pay attention. They were just the Avengers, and that was just 50 to 60 awesome comics.
Right.
Yeah. what was I going to say? I forgot what I was going to say. I'm getting sleepy now because I got to go to bed soon. So anything you want to say before I close this down?
Yeah. Did we get the link up for my book? I'm trying to. 'Cause I was never able to put that up in the private chat. It wouldn't let me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I got it right here. Here is your.
And I just want to let people know that as far as the Marshall Strong series, I think I have 6 books done. So people don't have to worry that the story will be. I used to hate when I would go to comic conventions and say that I'd go to the independent publisher, and one year they have, a book, and I take a chance on it, and then I go back next year. When I visit my friend Cam down in Florida, we'd go back and they'd have the same book. They never came out with 2 in the next year. This story arc, I think it's like 4 is already complete. So as I get them, out through Dan on his schedule of Thunder Zone's releases, there's no danger that the story arc won't be completed, because the issues, I did them in advance, and they kind of sat on the shelf for a while until I hooked up with Dan, and Dan had the expertise to help me get the get the book out. So nothing used to frustrate me more than starting something, and they never came out with issue 2, let alone finish the story arc.
There's a couple of crowdfunded comics that I got, and they didn't do as well as they had hoped, and issue 2 is never going to come out.
Right. Like I said, I can guarantee you that it's done, because they're already done completely.
Right. Mike, for those of you don't know, which is everybody, Mike started these comics like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You're done with. I was like, so when's that issue 1 done? You're like, issue 1, I'm done with 6. Right. So you're just pacing yourself with.
Well, originally I wanted to get a couple in advance, because I know, getting them out on time is a big deal. I also got kind of caught up in it. I was so excited that felt like I was on a roll. So I was like, when the artist was like, you want to start 2? I was like, let's start 2. But I also wanted to have a couple done in advance so that I could stay on schedule at release. And then but what also hit was I wasn't exactly sure how to go about it. And it took me some years before I ended up talking with Dan, and Dan was like, I could publish it like that. Dan's been doing, this is what he's been doing for a long time. So, thanks to Dan for helping me get, providing that expertise to help me get them out.
That you and I both just start making a comic at the same time.
Right. What was I remember when you were telling me about your ideas for, I think it was it Mary Sue, when we went after going to the diner with Dan, remember, like a year ago.
Yeah.
And we were talking in the parking lot at the end of the night, and we were just talking, and you were kind of running through. It's so interesting to see it. Now I can buy it. And I remember when it was a conversation in a parking lot.
It's so good. It's so good. I just got the final. It's done.
The art looks amazing. That cover is amazing, by the way. It looks so good.
The best work Renzo has ever done. It's funny because Renzo just wanted to draw it because he wanted to draw a girl, after doing the patriarch, and
right.
And I was like, I got to sex it up. So in the script, the monsters come, and Mary Sue is basically topless, but she's covering herself.
Right.
And Renzo didn't do that. He's like, that's my girl. Like, he got very protective of Mary.
Oh, that's
he
nice.
loves the character. And then the funny thing is, in the page 1, you see the patriarch's wife is in the shower. I expressly said how she was posed so you couldn't see anything, and he made that more explicit. I actually had to tell him to put
more thuds.
cover it up. So I'm gonna have to put some word. That's fine. But he likes Mary Sue, But
Okay.
And then I don't know if you saw the King Fu.
No, that one I didn't. Was that on the page?
I'll show you. No, it's not. It's not on the campaign page. It's a stretch goal card. But King Fu is one of the heroes from Project Red Cape. He's been Marshall
From the
Strong.
original.
Yeah, he's one of the original 12, if you remember the original from.
I remember Pillar.
Oh,
Remember
yeah.
Pillar?
Pillar's not.
Marshall Strong almost died from punching Pillar.
Yeah.
Because Pillar had invulnerability, and I hit it with my best shot. But I take the damage, and Marshall Strong almost died right there with his first punch.
Where are we? I'm trying to. Okay. So this is King Fu. I showed this. I've been, as Renzo and Oscar finished with the cards, I've been showing this. So he's the world's greatest. I know Jimmy, our other player, he loves King Fu, but he's a world's greatest martial artist and Elvis impersonator.
Looks awesome.
I wanted to. Jimmy was like, "You got to put King Fu in Heroic Tales too." So he has a cameo.
Oh, nice.
And so Renzo made a card of him, and people went nuts over him. So in Heroic Tales 2, Heroic Tales 3, I continue Mary Sue's story. She goes back to Flushing, and she meets another Asian martial artist superhero. And I'm like, there's no reason why it can't be King Fu. So that guy, I'll save him for another story. And just the reaction to him, I'm like, I'm so glad I did that, because now this story got bigger and bigger to the point.
That was a suggestion from Jimmy.
Yeah, to put it. And Jimmy suggested I put him in the book, and then other people like, oh, you got to do more. You got to do more. And as we're speaking right now, TC Miller is working on something with King Fu that he just sent me for approval. So it's snowballed from Jimmy's suggestion, fan reaction, and now there's going to be like a whole story with King Fu. It's funny because he's in the Patriarch comic, but he's going to be in Mary Sue, and it's so good. I'm chomping at the bit not to spoil it.
And we gotta give Jimmy credit. No one role plays like Jimmy.
Yes.
Jimmy is every one of his characters. He lived it, and it became 3-dimensional in a way that put the rest of us to shame.
And for those of you who don't know, we're talking about my friend Jimmy Griffin. He plays with us. The suit who is in issue number 1, Lucius Kane, is Jimmy's character.
Right. And that's the kind of character that Jimmy can play perfect.
He came up with the concept and everything, and we played him once, and then we both realized he works better as an NPC than a player character. So we never used. So I put him in the comic because he's the mayor of Science City. The suit, sold his soul to the devil. An empty suit who sold his soul to the devil. I love that character.
You're right. That's a great concept.
Do you remember what his power is? The suit, whatever he needs is in his pocket.
Right. Was it that's and you see that in the first story, right, where he produces the photograph.
Right. So Jimmy was like, "Oh, cool." So Jimmy was like, "Okay, so I could spend PowerPoints and pull out whatever." I'm like, "No, I tell you what's in there, and he has to figure out how to use it." Which Jimmy loved even more because
the more obstacles you put in his way, the happier he is.
Yeah.
They're consistent with with role playing the character.
Right. So for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, like I give points for everybody gets experience points for like problem solving, fighting, and things like that. But then at the end of the night, I give bonus points for role playing. So like everybody votes who is the best role player. That person gets extra experience points. Who is the best hero? That person gets and then who is the best at combat? They get. And Jimmy, almost without exception, gets the role playing. And it's funny.
It was like the Jimmy Griffin Award. It's like
it's just like, okay, who gets it? Jimmy? Okay, combat and hero, everybody. And it's funny because Jimmy has characters that will also get the hero because that's the concept. But he'll have characters that are like, no, he's never going to be the hero. Like he made up this character knowing that he's never going to get the hero award,
right? And he would play him as such.
Yeah, he'll play him as such. Yeah, everybody has a role play. Paul will always get the combat. He'll always figure something out. That's his specialty. And Marshall Strong usually got the hero award. He's the patriotic hero.
Goody two shoes.
It's funny because I wasn't sure if I could use Marshall. I was like, this is Mike's character. I can't put him in my so I made up a replacement for him, and I have like a story and everything, and now I'm like, now that guy's on the back burner.
Okay.
But I still want to use him because I like his.
Came up with something good.
Yeah, came up with something good. I don't want to use any character that's not. And Mike can verify. I always say I sound like Mitt Romney, where I have binders full of women. Mike can tell you, I literally have 3-ring binders, like of just superhero character sheets.
Right. I like I said that one time. Your universe is vast, and like it's very organized. And these binders it's like page after page, and everyone has a story in there. Every character, it's not just an idea for a character. It's a character who has an origin and a background and a history. So it's the hard part would be deciding what to use. I would think.
And that's why I didn't tell the patriarch story, because I was sent the script to Brian Bow and Fabrizio Aiello, and they were just like, it's too much. It's just world building. You know what I mean? So like in order to understand the patriarch's origin, like you had to care about my world. So I just, all right, I'm just gonna tell a story about the patriarch and hope people like him. And if people like him, then they'll put in the effort to understand, everything in his. So I think, after 3 appearances, I think I could tell people the origin. It's pretty complicated. Mike will tell you, it's people go crazy, and there's 2 origins. Every superhero has 2 origins: the real origin, and then the origin that the government creates to keep people away from the origin. Oh, Eric Guapo's here. How you doing, Eric Guapo? But I'm starting to babble now, and I'm getting this close to spoiling my comics because
right.
and weak. So again, Mike's comic is Heroic Tales. It's set within my universe, or our universe, we should say, because we both really created it together because we're role playing. But I'm like the Secret Shogun. Every time you talk about it, I'm like, because there's a big story about him that I really, really want to tell that might tie into Mary Sue. And I just I'm like, even if you spoil it, I don't think it'll ruin the story, because I don't think people will get it, because that character's got a really rich history, and I'm dancing around it. Like, do you tell his secret origins?
Nothing. No.
Oh, wow. That'll be awesome, because then all of a sudden people are like, oh, wow. All right.
Yeah, I didn't even, the first issue, I figured, like, you don't know if you're going to have when I did the first one, if I would ever get to do a second one, if I ever get to, so I just kind of started right in the middle of the story and say, if I can start Legion at the last installment of the Great Darkness Saga and still enjoy it, then hopefully someone can jump onto my thing.
Well, yeah, you start in the middle and then flashbacks.
If I tried to set it up, I was like, it's hard to do the slow build when you don't even know. At the time, I didn't know that it was going to be a second and a third and a fourth.
Right.
And also, it's not like it's coming out monthly in your local comic shop, Right. So it's almost like the pace has to be picked up a little bit. So otherwise, it would be too slow a build, to any story, unless you could come out monthly or something. But that's a lot of Kickstarters.
Old Dirty Fatty says, if we get John to stay up past midnight and playing with booze, he'll spill the good. No, if you play me with booze, I'm going right to sleep, instantly to sleep. Give me coffee. I'll get sleepy and wired, and I'll start telling everything. But
I forgot. Yeah, I'm off because my kids are off from school, so I'm forgetting you're on a work night, and I'm thinking in my brain. I'm thinking it's the weekend because I stayed home today. I didn't go.
That's why half the crew is out. I bet you.
Yeah, the kids are off from school
this week. So
I'm sitting here thinking of, it's so fun to hang out on a Friday night. It's not Friday.
In the third, I say the third appearance of Mary Sue because Heroic Tales 2 is what we're campaigning now. Heroic Tales 3 is going to have the follow-up to Mary Sue, and then I'm going to introduce the Raven, who Mike's character met the Raven and was the Raven for a little while.
Oh yeah, that was it.
Right. In my world, the Raven got seriously hurt, and Mike's character took the mantle and the costume and was the Raven for a while. That was a great. That was like John Wick. You were just running through.
Oh yeah, that was fun. That was
yeah. It was a house of like a street gang, and you just like bust open the door and was like running through the house.
You know, I have a John Q. Public backup story done that I gotta find when I can add that to one of my. Those are the street level heroes that
I would have a hankering for different. So we had like cosmic characters, regular superhero characters, fantasy characters, and then we had street level vigilante characters. And like my friend Jimmy was
Blackjack,
and they didn't have any powers. They just would like skill
right.
level. And yours was John Q. Public, who is the creepiest. You get the role playing bonus when you play. That brings out the insanity in you.
Well, yeah, that's my attempt to do De Niro in Taxi Driver or something. You know, like, yeah. I actually kind of based it on Michael Douglas and Falling Down.
Right.
Kind of.
And if you never played, but Jimmy would dungeon master every once in a while, and I had a character, a bad guy called the Heavy Hitter, who was. It was so fun to play the Heavy Hitter. He could transform like the Abomination. He had a gambling addiction. He was centered in Las Vegas, and then he would transform into like a Hulk-like creature and like just wreck everything. But nothing was ever his fault. Why are you making me do this? Like, he would yell at people, and he was so fun. Right. And then my superhero was the Private Eye. And my wife, we used to live in a 1-bedroom apartment, and she's like, I don't like when you play that character. You get crazy. You get weird. And the Private Eye is like he was like Rorschach. He was my homage to Rorschach. He had just a mask with an eyeball on it and a fedora and everything. And he would do conspiracy. He would draw on his walls, and he was connecting everything. And like Jimmy would make an adventure and like come up with, I'm like, of course, that's why. Because, and I started incorporating it into my Alex Jones theory. And Jimmy's like, I don't know if I should. You're kind of becoming the DM in my story.
Right. Yeah, no, I love those street level characters that we had like Brass Knuckles, and they would,
Mike's character, John Q. Public, your specialty was the comb.
Right, the comb. Right.
Yeah.
I in the backup story I did, it features the comb. I have to, and I remember getting the artist to draw it and showing him how I wanted it to look from an advertisement for one of those unbendable, was it used to say unbreakable combs, and it was like
Mike was into martial art. Mike didn't you do MMA fighting for like a training or something like that?
Well, yeah, I did. Well, I did like Brazilian jiu-jitsu and judo and stuff, but I was more of a dabbler than I was any, I was the hobbyist, not the guy who was like hardcore,
Right. And didn't you say that you saw like Mossad was talking about how to defend yourself using a plastic comb?
Oh, there was a guy, and he's passed. He taught something called split-second survival. His name was Larry Wick, and he basically showed how you could kill somebody with a comb, a plastic comb.
And that became the weapon of choice of your.
Yeah, that's where I got it from. Yeah. I went to a seminar with Larry Wick, and Larry was just like an assassin. Like, he was just, the guy was amazing. But when he showed like, oh, this is how you kill someone with your bare hands. This, I was like, I don't know if you should be teaching us this. But he showed with the comb that you could take someone out with a comb, and I remember thinking, like, how cool would that be for John Q. Like a street level character who looks like he's unarmed until he's behind you with the comb.
I remember we did a story of there was these two bad guys. One of them was Caesar and his brother Napoleon, and one of them was a child molester, and the other guy was a drug dealer. That it was I was trying to make up like Memorial Punisher type villains, and you guys captured them, and Jimmy is trying to, okay, we're gonna get the information stuff like, and you just walked up to with the comb from behind, And his brother's like, I'll talk.
Well, the thing, I remember John Q. Public, he was supposed to be, psycho. And he also, like, he would write his manifestos. Remember his diary where he talked about, like, all the things that have been on his mind.
Fluoride in the water is
Right. And just, but also like, how, household things around the house can be used, to
that was
inflict
one of the things
grievous-
that we did with that character is like Jimmy's character Blackjack would be like, right public, and you would just, there's fluoride in the water. Like you didn't listen to anything, and you started like in the middle of a thought, and just went on and on. It's like, right.
What was the moment I had where they're in a cheap motel and there's some people having sex in the next room, and he hears the woman's voice screaming, "I can't bear the thought of a woman suffering." And he breaks through into the hotel room next door. Like, what do you think's going on in a cheap hotel like this?
Right. No. That's what you thought was going on. Your character breaks into the room, and it was a guy talking to himself, whipping himself.
Oh, right.
It was all the vigilantes.
There was no woman there. Yeah, it was just
all the vigilantes got together for like somebody called in. We got to get all together. The mob is congregating here, so it was all the crazy vigilantes showed up, and I forget the guy's. I think his name was the Cardinal or something like that.
Then he just said, excuse me," and he shut the door.
and Jimmy goes, "What's going on?" And John Q. Public goes, "Man's got a right to flagellate himself." That became like a line for years. Man's got a right to flagellate himself.
Good times.
Yeah. So then you wonder, this is what we do in the long box household during the weekend. Make some chili.
Right.
These crazy roll.
John's famous chili. Good memory.
Yeah. It's been too long. When was the last time you, Paul, Jimmy got together for a game?
Yeah, I've said that.
And the thing is, we all live close to each other now.
Right. We have to have a reunion.
Jimmy lives 5 minutes away. Paul lives in the same spot, but like within 20 minutes. You live within 20 minutes. I mean, you guys used to drive out to Flushing for like an hour.
Right.
And we got together every weekend.
Yeah. I don't miss that drive to Flushing. That's
finding parking. Oh my God.
Oh, remember the time that there was like a union meeting? Yeah. I had every parking spot within 2 miles was taken. And I remember driving around for like 40 minutes before I finally found a spot. And I remember you said, I would have just left.
Oh, one last thing I got to talk about. Remember that guy? I don't know how he just said, "Hey, you want to play?" We used to drive to his house in like Levittown on Friday nights.
Yes.
Dragons. And it was excruciating.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know how this guy, it was on my forum. He joined my forum. Like, yeah, okay, we'll go to your house and play. And it was just like, Mike and I were both Rangers in a D&D campaign. It was literally the last time I played Dungeons & Dragons. And we were up in a tower. We were the lowest ranking guys, so we were up in the tower overnight. And we saw bad guys coming, orcs coming or something like that. And me and you had to get out of the tower and alert the main people. And it was 45 minutes of discussing going through the snow, which path to take. It was so boring.
And they were I think they had originally, they were the kind of people that play with miniatures and measured things. And, we always played just more like theater of the mind.
Right. We would have said, okay, I get that. Okay, it's in the snow. Give me a roll just to see if you
right. See how,
45 minutes of choosing the path.
And remember, he wouldn't let you, if you deviated from what he wanted you to do, he would have like, wasn't it like was it a magical dog or a hand?
Yeah, Mr. Chew.
Mr. Chew.
Guys, we got 72 people watching. I'm not kidding. Mr. Chew is a magical chihuahua who would pop into our, whatever, and lecture me on making the wrong choices.
Right. So if you thought, okay, so let's head this way, but in his mind, as the game master, he was thinking, no, I thought they would go this way. The magical dog would appear and basically nudge you to go the way he wanted you to go.
So I remember saying to him, why am I playing the game? Why don't you just write a novel?
Just tell me where to go. It was like, yeah, we didn't get to make any, and it was like at every key interval, here comes the dog leading you.
Right.
And I was like, after a while, it felt kind of like, like you were watching someone else play because you didn't
Right.
get to make any decisions.
And then it was like, okay, there's a combat. You would take out the miniatures and put them on oak tag with and it became a role play. I mean, it became a desktop
Right.
miniature game.
The
It wasn't. And if you remember, every other week we played Village Vigilantes, and we were standing up, high-fiving each other and slapping and yelling.
Right. The V&V, we played that freewheeling, no measurement, theater of the mind, and they seemed to enjoy it. But their way of playing when they were in charge was that, it wasn't freewheeling. Everything happened so slow. And then when we did combat, essentially it would end up, you're lined up across from the other miniature or a diagram. And no matter how complex the environment, you ended up just, okay, they would measure the distance between you and them, and then you start.
Yeah, I'd shoot arrows.
It didn't, I don't remember any of that as a movie. Let's put it that way.
I remember a plastic figure on a white piece of oak tag with boxes drawn on. Do you remember this though? We started the superhero team. The name of the superhero team was the Truth Seekers. And
a mission statement. He wanted to.
So they formed the team. They come up with the name, and Mike goes, "What do you want to do next?" He goes, "Let's write a mission statement."
Yeah,
I just bursted to laughter. I'm like, "That's what I want to do on a Friday night."
And the thing is, I think we were hot on the trail of the villains,
right?
And he's like, "But let's not pursue them.
Right.
Let's just take a break and write a mission statement." That was when I had the worst name ever for a character. Do you remember?
Yep. The Zen
Agent. The Zen Agent.
The Spartan, who I absolutely love the Spartan.
Right. I salvaged him. And what I like, I used the opportunity when he got knocked unconscious. So when he came back, he's all delusional about his past. But the Zen, I always forget that he started off, no matter how bad we can criticize the way they played, they never came up with a name as bad as.
No, so you don't remember his character's name then?
Dr. Resin.
Dr. Resin, yeah.
And who was the other guy? What was
Shadow Man?
Shadow Man.
Shadow Man, that's right.
Right.
He fired lasers, but he confiscated all the guns from all the guards and would use guns because lasers cost power. I'm like, Spider-Man doesn't collect other people's guns.
Good times. Good times.
And here's the funny thing is, if the Zen Agent, if you remember, he got knocked unconscious. Do you remember by who? The first time I ever used the Subterranean, who is the villain in issue 2 of Heroic Tales.
Ah,
yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's right. We were okay. And I remember using his being knocked out as the moment where his powers didn't change, his identity changed.
Yeah, you changed his.
And it was when he comes to, he's permanently. It's like, you ever hear about people who like they have some kind of medical episode, like a stroke or something, and then they wake up with an accent that's not their own.
Right.
I was hearing, apparently is real. There was a person who had after a stroke, and it had to be pointed out to them, this British woman speaking with the Chinese accent. She had no idea. Like it sounded like she was making fun of someone, but they said it was from the stroke. It was so something happened with her personality, and so I had it with the Zen Agent. After taking the hit on the head, he wakes up with a different identity, same powers, used completely different, and because the Zen Agent was the worst, yeah. And had the worst name.
Yeah, I love the Spartan. He was like, he had Green Lantern abilities, but he could only make objects made out of bronze, and if they existed in ancient Greece.
Right. So he sees himself as a Spartan warrior, and his mind can't conceive of anything that didn't exist during that era. You
made simple machines, levers, and you had like a superhero costume, but then boom, you were in bronze armor, a sword, a spear.
Right, and it's all like Green Lantern. It's all made from
right. And I remember at one point you had the spear and you went like that, and you elongated it right through a bad guy.
Right, and then he would make the giant shield and drop it.
One thing that you did. Again, I keep talking about how my game is Dungeons, Dragons, superheroes, and Lovecraft. mind flayers were a major bad guy in my superhero game. So you guys were underground fighting mind flayers, and there was just like this mind flayer hive mind brain tentacle monster, and the Spartan literally like pole vaulted, flew in the air, and then as you were coming towards it, your spear just went. Whoop. I remember like it was a movie. Like bringing yourself, spinning the spear around, and then all of a sudden the spear just growing long, like the elf character in the Hellboy movie.
And that was the one where Shadowman seemingly died, and Dr. Resin, Gary, saved him with acupuncture.
Right.
Remember that? Yeah. And you said he had the acupuncture skill. I don't believe in acupuncture, but if it's in the game and he has it as a skill, I have to.
Shadowman received a critical wound and he was bleeding to death.
Right.
And he's like, "Can I use acupuncture as a mean?" I was like, "Give me a roll." And like he rolled so well. I'm like, "There you go." That's
I remember he thought he was dead, but he didn't know that his basic hits.
Right. In Villains and Vigilantes, you have hit points and you have power. If you have no power, you're tired. If you have no hit points, you're unconscious. You die if you lose both of them. So it's harder. It's harder to die because it's supposed to be super, But whereas in Dungeons and Dragons, it's hit points. But then you have this artificial -10 is death or whatever. No, it's real simple. If you lose all your hit points, you're unconscious. If you lose all your powers, you're fatigued. Like power is stamina. If you lose all your stamina and your hit points, then you're dead. So he thought he was dead and he was freaking out.
But the 4 points you have left is basically your body weight, right? It's divided by 50. And he had a couple of what was it called? Basic hits left.
Right.
And then and you lose one per round. I think
you lose one power point per round from bleeding. His stamina.
But when you get down to your basic hits, don't you?
And you're dead. Then the basic hits are just the hit points of your corpse.
Right. Because I remember that he did the acupuncture. And he didn't have a great chance to do it.
Right.
Like he had a very slim chance, and he
rolled
it legit.
Like it was one of those rolls that you.
And that was one of the high fives, because it was like I have a 3% chance to save my friend, and he rolled the dice and he got like the 3%. It was one of the great moments.
Well, another great moment, and I still remember this as a movie, was this is going to be if I ever make it to Heroic Tales 20, I'll tell the story of Marshall Strong got blasted into 10,000 years of the past on another planet. And he started a slave rebellion. He became the Mighty Mars. That was your name in the Movian Empire. He became like the most hated, wanted criminal.
Was it Captain Empire?
Yeah, Captain Empire was the.
Do you remember when Marshall Strong thought he was fighting off these things, and he has no idea that they're actually sucking his brain, and he's unconscious, dreaming it all.
Right. And I remember your face when I told you what happened. You were like, "Yeah." You know what inspired that was the death of Guardian when he came back, and Guardian told this whole ridiculous story about blasting onto Jupiter.
Right.
And from Alpha Flight, and I was like, Mike read this comic too, and he's falling for it. This is awesome.
Because I remember I thought I was doing all these amazing things, but in reality, the character was basically unconscious with
dying,
right, and dying every round,
right.
While this thing sucks the life out, and it was Captain Empire, the Movian, who saves him.
Right, he was the noble alien that you befriended, and then they betrayed him.
That moment where he saves him, I've wanted to get like a comic, like an art commission of that moment, because I think he rips it off like it's like a giant parasite. Like
it was like that Black Mercy from that whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow, that Alan Moore Superman story, like
where
like you were just like doing these astounding feats and stuff like that, and then. Lo and behold, you really die. But if you remember, I was reading the Lensman at the time, so there was like this galactic patrol. They had these like Starman rods that each rod was quantum linked to a star, and your character was one of the first people to get one, and it was literally you had to make a roll or die.
Right, I remember that. Right,
you made that roll. You stood up and you're like, yeah. You're like, oh yeah, I guess we should stand up too.
Right, yeah. Right, because it's like your character either evolves to become this carrier of the cosmic rod, or you die and we roll up new characters. So
Yeah, sorry, this guy he's sending me these updated art, and I can't. I'm dying to spoil it to you, but I can't. But that was, and then that if again, it's going to tie into issue 4 of Heroic Tales, so I can't
don't
spoil
give it away.
Yeah.
Resist the temptation.
I know. Please, guys, I got to make it to at least 6 issues of Heroic Tales.
Support the book. We
Yeah,
got to know.
Support the book. There's so much history. Like again, there's so much like in Mary Sue. I don't want to spoil the names of the characters, so don't shout out the names of the characters. But do you remember Jerry GM'd 2 adventures, and me and Jimmy made up characters set in the 40s?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, well, my character is going to be Mary Sue's going to realize next appearance that she can't fight. She doesn't know how to fight. She's a 110-pound college student. You know, so she's like, all right, I guess if I'm a superhero, so she's going to get a trainer who is my character from the 40s, but nowadays, so he's an old man. You know, and that's going to introduce him to all like the fisticuff characters, backdoor into your vigilante characers.
Don't you wish you had unlimited funds?
Oh yeah, unlimited funds and like
a studio. If with them, how many books could you have going at the same time?
It's, I hate to say it because this is mean, but I could write a lot of scripts. Really, I mean, I have about 6 scripts,
right?
But I got to filter it through Renzo because I really don't want anybody else but Renzo drawing it. I will make the concession though, because Renzo's going to draw the Patriarch, and then Heroic Tales is going to be 2 heroes. But Renzo wants to draw Mary Sue, and then Renzo's dying to draw the Raven. So, but after starting with Heroic Tales 4, I might have another artist do the other story. So Renzo's going to have his pick out of whatever he wants from Heroic Tales.
And you know, for as good as Renzo is, and it's tremendous that you got someone, you know, that good to work on your book and have a consistent look, that you'll probably be also pleasantly surprised that, like, you know, obviously he can't do every book if you're doing multiple books. That I know working with Elton, like there were times when I would write the script one way and then he would draw it maybe from a different angle or different. Yeah, it would look better than what I was picturing. And like,
Renzo has changed a few things, and he's the artist. He's more visual, right? So,
right. And I think every artist who's good, they bring something unique, so that, you know, maybe it's good that not every book that you're putting out has the same look. You know, if down the road you get to expand, you know,
like DC Miller, who I'm communicating with right now, is somebody that I'd like to work with. He has like a really cool. It almost looks like a Paul Dini from Batman the Animated Series,
right?
You know, Marcus, who's in the chat, the moderator. Like, I kind of want Marcus to do. I have the public eye, my character. Like, I have a crazy story about him that I'd like Marcus to. I think Marcus's style would be, and I want it to be black and white. You know, and I know Marcus he's never had his stuff colored. You know, but for some reason, because that's the way he sees the world in black and white. Luke Stone, he's doing Call Sign Orion right now, and he's like, he leveled up. He did Chrome Dog, which was good. His art was good in Chrome Dog, but his art in Call Sign Orion is, I'm going to say, a little bit more practice, and he's on John Byrne level. It's looking really good. Oh. You get like Oscar coloring it. It's going to look amazing. So these are guys I'd like to work with in the future. There's a couple of guys that I'm reaching out to, but I don't know if I can afford them.
Right.
Things like that. Maybe for covers, but you know, like again, I'm trying not to spoil everything, but Mike, it's funny when you seeing the you know, when the comics come out, you're like, I remember that adventure. I remember. That's not the way it went. That's not the way it went. Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, you have a better memory for it than I, because I'll remember like cool moments of action and or moments that are like stood out to me as either funny or action. but like you remember like all the entire thread of the
I write it down.
Subplots and all the.
I write it down. I have notebooks full of my notes, and then I would like reread them. And then if you guys, if you go to www.villainsvigilantesforum.com, you could see like I would put all the story sessions. I've been real lax. Like I haven't done like the last 4 years worth of stories, but you'll see like literally if you go to that, and there's a story called Explosion at the Bank, because that's been like a long time joke with Mike and I.
There's an explosion.
Like, want to play Villains Vigilantes? Okay, okay. There's an explosion at the bank. Like it was just an ad hoc story, no thought. Grab generic characters and have a fight. You know, because if you didn't plan anything, so I literally made up a story called Explosion at the Bank, and it started and it ended up leaving the universe into the Upside Down. And if you read that story called Explosion at the Bank, you'll see literally I came up with the Upside Down 10 years before Stranger Things. You know, I'm so glad that forum's up there with timestamps. You know,
Right.
I don't want to tell that story because people are going to accuse me of ripping it off. You know, when I have a magic character, don't any names, he's going to explain the nature of the universe. You know what I mean? So you're going to see how the Upside Down makes sense with the way I have a model of the universe based on, you know, the D&D, you know, chaos and law and everything, and the eternal champion of Elric. It's all mushed together.
By the way, there's so many stories. I sometimes, and there's so many years that we played. I sometimes wonder if I combine, like I remember this scene and this scene, but I put them in together when they were actually could have been in separate stories years apart. Because I'm always amazed that yourself and Jimmy seem to remember.
Oh, Jimmy remembers everything to the point. I'm playing with. I don't know if it's because of the car accident or if it's just getting older, but we'll play, and then 4 or 5 weeks later we'll do part 2. And I just completely. We started a new adventure last time we played. And they're like, "Aren't we going to finish the old one?"
Right.
So I'm like, "Oh my god, I can't believe that I started a whole new adventure." And we still had one more session to go of the old, because again, I don't know. I don't know if it's the car accident or if it's just getting older.
I've been doing that for years, so hopefully it's nothing.
Yeah. So anybody, oh wow, we still have 75 people watching. Thank you. Pressure. Anybody want to ask questions before me, Michael, go? I can't think of anything else to talk about. I'm getting kind of anything. I always say I keep talking as long as the chat keeps anything.
That was a lot of fun. That was nice trip down memory lane, and thanks for having me on, by the way, to promote the book.
Yeah.
Yeah,
this is your second time on. A lot of fun. I just hope we didn't bore RJ with our stories, but here's one more look. It's on Kickstarter. So if you go to Kickstarter and type in Thunderzone or Dan Sen.
Yeah, Dan Sen is DAN, and then his last name is SEHN. I see you have the link over here, the Kickstarter.com projects.
Right, and you could just click on the link. Again, you could get all of the comics, or you could go a la carte. So here's all the rewards. You could buy digital. Marshall Strong digital, Marshall the Weirdo digital,
right. So he offers the digital of everything, and he offers the physical copy of anything. And like you said, you can do it a la carte. You can order the bundle. I think you save a little money if you order the bundle. If you want to, you just want to get one book, everything can be ordered individually.
Right.
So,
yeah, I bought one of each cover, so I bought 3 copies of Marshall Strong.
Oh, thank you, John. That was nice.
Yeah, got to support him, and like someday when all 6 issues come out, and if I'm still around, I would love to like put out like the long box edition. You know what I mean? Like maybe
right.
Because
have it like a mesh with exact
right, like
the original continuity.
Right, like Apex would be Aegis.
Well, I changed it to the last thing I'll say, because I know you got to get to bed, but right. Just like yourself, like I know the team chess is what he used in V&V,
right?
And like you said, he's a litigious guy,
right?
And I thought, okay, so I don't want to use chess because then I'll be accused of ripping off. Not that any. I mean, I don't know how many people play V&V even, but it doesn't seem to stop him.
Right.
So I said I changed, chess, and I trying to come up with a name. My friend Tom helped me come up with. We were thinking of different names that sounded like an organization. He came up with Apex, and I said, "Oh yeah, let's go with that." And I changed. There was a character, Mr. Clean, that you had in there, and I changed him to Mr. Clear because I was afraid that I'd get sued by Mr. Clean, And meanwhile, like as if anyone's noticing I exist, But at the same time,
Mr. Clean is a mysterious behind the scenes guy who has germophobia. So every time you saw him, you would literally have to go and take a bath and use ointments and and wear like a suit, and then you'd meet in this like sterile room, and he was bald, and everybody called him Mr. Clean.
And I was afraid that obviously copyrighted as far as the.
There's going to be changes from our role playing game because some stories I directly ripped off from comic books.
Right, it's gaming, it's whatever makes it fun,
Yeah. There's literally some characters like this is a cool character. I'm just going to use this name because who cares?
Right.
Like if you remember, Larry Mirando from the Pulp played with us, and he was Batman.
Oh, I don't even remember that.
He played as Batman.
It's like that's interesting. Like that didn't even change it up a little bit.
No, he's like, I was like, all right, say Batman. He only played once, so it didn't really matter.
Right. All righty, John, that was awesome.
Yeah, I'm getting real sleepy all of a sudden.
Say, what time do you get up for work these days?
4 a.m.
Oh, that's even earlier than me. I get up at 4:30, and I thought I was the early one. But I'm off.
I have to go up to 168 Street.
So when I sleep in, if that makes you feel any better.
When I was at the airport, I woke up at 4:30, but now I have to go up to 168th Street.
Right. That commute into the cities for the birds. It's the worst.
It is disgusting.
And the city looks like it's hurting.
It's disgusting. The city is disgusting. Manhattan is gross. It's disgusting. It's worse than I've ever seen it. Every day I get off the subway. It's gross. If you get off at 168th Street, I call it the Bridge of Khazad-dûm. So I get off the subway, and there's just homeless because it's warm. It's really warm. So they all just sleep. It's just
right.
And they're all sleeping, and their asses are sticking out. You know what I mean? It's laying on the ground. It's gross. And then you got to go up and you got to go over the subway. And then there's elevators. And I've learned that if you go behind the elevators, those doors open first, so you can get in first before everybody else. But it's all homeless people sleeping. So
you have to run the gauntlet.
Oh my God! And then I'm going up the stairs. There's human feces on the stairs.
You know where the what was it? The C or the E is train in Penn Station. Yeah. I remember there's two stairs going up side by side, and I go to the one stairs. There's a guy lying across the stairs with his hand in his pants. He's like unconscious. So I go to the other stair to get away from him, and there's a guy unconscious lying with his hand in his pants, like it was just so gross, and I was like, so you have to kind of step over these guys. I mean, not everything is always, not every day you encounter the same, but it's too much. There's a lot going on.
So I'm in Penn State. I usually have like 12, 13 minutes before my train. So today I'm just standing there, and I'm looking, and there's this hot girl talking to an old guy, and I'm just like, is she a prostitute? Like, is that his daughter? Like, I don't know. It's none of my business. They don't look like, but it just looked. It just didn't
like an odd match.
Yeah, it looked like an odd match. So I'm like, okay, and I'm looking at my phone and blah blah. And this hot Asian girl comes walking up to me today, and she's like, "Can I get like $10 for food?" And I'm like, "No, no." And she's like, "Oh, because I'm hungry, and and I'm visiting the town and blah blah blah." And I'm like, I go, "Who carries cash anymore?" Like I have like $6 in my pocket just because I'm always afraid that my Metro card's gonna be out. You know what I mean? So I could get home. I don't want to have to jump a turnstile or something. So I carry emergency $10, and I'm not giving it. So I just go like, "Who carry?" All I have is a card. She goes. She picks up her phone, and she's got a QR code. She goes, "Scan this," and I'm like, I'm not getting involved.
Get the hell out of here.
You know, some hot girl coming up with a QR code to give her money. Like, yeah, that's not going to drain my bank account. Like, I was like, I'm not getting involved in any of
She
this.
says, just enter your social security number here.
And then she walks away, and I see her talk. And then I see that hot girl talking to the other guy. She turns around, and she's got her phone with a QR code, and this guy has his phone. I'm like, oh my god, there's like hot girls going around Penn Station with QR codes scamming people.
The new scam, I guess.
Yeah. So, yeah, she's got a phone and she needs cash. So I didn't know. I don't understand the subtleties. Maybe it was a coincidence, but once I saw the other girl, I'm like, this is an organized scam ring. Who knows? Maybe they just get your information and now they'll just like send pictures to your wife. Oh, look, this guy's flirting with the hot, I'm a prostitute. Who knows? I'm just like, I don't want to have anything to do.
Yeah, I just probably like yourself. I keep my head down, and sometimes I've worn earbuds that I'm not even playing music, but I don't.
I had earbuds on too. That didn't stop her,
Oh, right. The resistance.
It was like my spider sense started tingling. You know what I mean? I was like, this ain't right. Hot girl talking to me in Penn Station. That ain't right. That don't happen. That didn't even happen in my 20s.
Chinatown is right behind where I work, and I was at a restaurant getting something at the counter, and an attractive Asian woman, was standing kind of close to me, and I turned around and she asked me for directions to the Soho area. I remember that. Do you know where the Soho area is? And I thought she was a little close. I got pickpocketed.
Oh.
It was the only time in my life I've been. The amazing thing was that I had just taken money out. So I think I had like $60 in my wallet. I had just taken out 80 or something, and but I had taken out my credit cards because I remember, like, literally like 2 days before, my father says he saw me kind of organizing my wallet, and he says, if you're not planning to use your credit card, I wouldn't carry them around with you every day. And like literally like 2 days before, and I never imagined I would be pickpocketed. I always thought I'd be too savvy to be pickpocketed, like I would pick up. But I guess, and I turned around, I said, no, I know it's just north of here, but I don't really know. And then when I went to pay, when I went to put my change in my wallet, I realized my wallet was gone. And I remember the woman at the counter. I think it was because it was just before I went to pay. I went to get my wallet, and she's saying, yeah, that's $14, whatever it was. And I said, yeah, hold on a minute. Did I put my wallet on the counter? I'm looking around. And then she's like, $14. I was like, just a minute. Just got robbed. And then she almost didn't take my 20 because I had taken out a 20 already. She almost didn't take the money I had because she saw how mad I got when I, screaming at her. But then I realized it's not her fault. I'm an idiot. I let this person. But then after that, I started noticing apparently people, I wasn't the only one getting pickpocketed. And there were multiple signs around there, especially at the ATMs, saying, be careful for pickpockets. And I remember I wanted to track her down and beat her to death.
With a crowbar.
That's how mad I would have. I have since let go of that anger. I'm sure Herbalife probably wasn't so great, but at the time it felt like such a violation.
Yeah, Penn Station because a real world escape from New York after 3 a.m. Yeah, I remember back in the 80s going to CBGBs and then coming back too late, and then we had to like literally sleep on the floor because if you get back like after
there's like a 3-hour gap.
There's not a train till 6, so you sit there. I remember eating a slice of pizza that was as big as a shovel. You get this big slice of pizza, and some guy came up to me and he goes, "You got any money?" And before I said anything, he goes, "You better not say no because you don't know how I'm going to react." And I'm just sitting there like, I think I'm like 17, 18 years old, and I'm eating this piece of pizza. And this guy's like 40, you know what I mean? And I'm like, did you just threaten me? Like, it didn't register, you know what I mean? I'm dumb. I'm probably been drinking, you know what I mean? And did you just threaten me? And he goes, you don't know how I'm going to react if you say no. And I just was like, boom, and I hit him in the face with the pizza. And then I was so mad because I didn't have enough money to buy another slice of pizza. And he just went down, pizza was hot. And I remember 2 cops just materialized. And I was like, I'm going to jail. I was like putting out my wrist, and the cop's like, how many times we tell you not to threaten? And the cop's like, did he threaten you?
They knew him. They probably.
and they're like dragged him away, and the guy's just like, I just remember like, there's my pizza.
You messed with the Mass Transit Avenger.
Yeah.
That-
Oh, I can tell you stories about the Mass Transit Avenger.
right. That's
Like happened 2 more times since my car accident. I didn't even tell you.
I know one of them, right? Was the guy staring at you?
I got into 2 fist fights on mass transit since my car accident. So
Since you broke your neck.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say two in your life, because I know the bus to New Mexico and the Long Island Railroad, the guy with the boombox.
yeah,
That was the one you said with the blood grenade.
another guy who wouldn't move his bicycle, and then another guy who had one of those thing crowded train, and he's sitting over here, and then next to him is his scooter with the snap up wheel.
Right, right.
Can you move it? And he told me to F off, and so I'm hitting him with it. I just think it's funny that I'm 57 years old and I fought like a 30-year-old guy and a 22-year-old guy. The thing is, strike them first, and they don't expect white people to react. So there you go.
My father used to say, don't fight, avoid fights. But if you have to fight, hit first and don't stop hitting. He said the guy who wants to go second usually doesn't get a chance.
But the guy with the bicycle that wouldn't get out of the way, like I was being pushed from behind, and he's trying to get off, but I'm being pushed from behind, and he's like, "Don't touch my bicycle." I go, "Dude, they're pushing me. I'm sorry," So I put my hands on his steer on the 2 handlebars, and I turned it sideways so I could get by, and he goes to hit me, and I blocked it. Like, it's funny because he went to hit me, and I hit, and my hand slid down, and now I got his throat, and I just was like squeezing him and he just collapsed, and I'm holding him, and I picked up my fist, and I just looked, and some businessman goes, "Are you insane?" And I just looked at him, I go, "I might be a little." And he backed up, and I was like, I don't have to punch this guy. Fight's over. And then I let go of him, and he freaking, and everybody in the train was watching me. And I'm like, okay, well, next stop, I'm going to jail. So I just remember sitting down with a big smile on my face, like, I'm going to jail.
Well, the big danger here is getting like stabbed, or you don't know who's got a gun, or
I know.
So, a guy at work I know, a guy shoved him when he was getting off the train, and he turned. And he's not one to. I would let it slide. He's not one to let it slide. He was a big tough guy. He went to grab the guy, and he got his hat, and then he just hit him over, the head with his hat, and he's standing over the guy, and then he was like, he gets off. So, but the doors don't close. So the guy gets up and he walks over to the door, and he's just standing in the doorway. And my friend is standing on the platform, and they're both staring at each other. And then the doors close, and then the guy starts going, "That's right, that's right," like as if he was gonna, "You run," but the door was open the whole time. What he didn't know was one of the guys we work with goes one more stop. So he said, he got to see what happened after the doors closed. And he said that even the people on the subway were laughing at the guy because they could see he waited till the doors closed. Yeah. There was no force field, but the guy was waiting.
Right.
And then when the doors closed, then he starts talking trash. You better run.
I remember once, this was about 6 or 7 years ago, I had a newspaper. I had a New York Post. It was like one of the last times I bought a New York Post.
Was that the guy who threw it up or something like that?
That was a different, because I would always read the paper and then give it to somebody. Hey, you want a paper? And this guy took it, threw it away, and I was like, ah. But one guy, I had the New York Post, and I forget what he was, a crazy guy, and he's yelling and screaming, and I'm just sitting there, like I can't ignore him. I got to observe. And he came over and started yelling and screaming again, and I just threw the paper into his face. So there was just, and then through the cloud, started punching him. You know what I mean? So he, I was like, obfuscation, boom, boom. And then get off on the next stop. Gotta,
No, it's.
You're gonna see me on the news one of these days.
You're a magnet for it. I've had a few close moments, but like I had a guy who was gigantic, and I'm by the door holding the the frame, the bar at the door, and all of a sudden he's staring at me, and I was trying to just ignore it, but then I felt like ignoring it was making him angrier. So I said, "Oh, something wrong?" I tried to say it like unaccusatory, and he said, "Why are you all up in my phone?" I didn't even know he had a phone. He apparently, when he was bent over, he's looking at his phone. I said, "I'm not looking at your phone." And he goes, "I saw you looking at my phone." And I don't know what to say. I've already said I wasn't.
That's what he said. Yeah, because you were looking at all that gay porn, and I was just, you know,
this guy was gigantic. I would have had to shoot him. You know, like there was no. And there was a group of girls there that seemed like they were in high school, and they started laughing. I don't think it had anything to do with him. So he thought they were laughing at. He stood up and started yelling at them, and then the doors open and they get off, and he kind of followed them to the door. And I remember thinking for a second, like, I can't let them get beat up saving me.
Right.
They were the distraction. But he waited when the doors closed and he didn't go out after them. Before he turned around, I headed down, down car because I didn't want him to. I think he had forgotten about me by the time he turned around. But I remember that guy would have been pretty hard. He was gigantic. He was. Because I have had it happen where someone wanted me to move when I'm not moving. I'm not, it's a crowded subway. I'm not in the, and this one guy was small, and I said, "No, I'm good." Because I was like, I have to move for the big guy because I'm going to lose. But this guy's half my size. I don't have to move for everybody.
I told you Friday, the guy in the was just, I'm going to kill all the white people and their women. I told you I stayed him down until he left. But going home that day, I'm going into the subway, and this crazy homeless guy just goes like pretending he has a knife, and I just grabbed his wrist. I said, "Do you want to die?" I said, "That's how people die," and I just started twist, and he just looked at me. I said, "You don't know who you're dealing with." Like I actually thinking of that guy with the pizza. You don't know how I'm gonna. I was like, "You don't know how people are gonna react to that." I said, "You think it's funny? You're gonna die." And I just remember he made these big eyes, and then I just had to catch my train.
That was 2 in one day.
Manhattan sucks, ladies and gentlemen. Can I please stress New York sucks?
Yeah, no, it's pretty bad. Like I said, I
go up there. The coffee guy didn't have coffee. After that, he's got a coffee truck. He's sitting in the coffee truck. I'm like, "Okay, let me get no coffee." I'm like, "Why are you here?" I just.
I've had those a handful of close, semi-close calls, but I think I've been more because I have probably more days where I don't encounter. I see stuff that's a little disturbing and gross, but I don't. It doesn't always end up in my lap. Right. You are a magnet, for this stuff.
My sister calls me the freak magnet.
Right. Yeah, there's something about you that they tune into your frequency. I think.
Yeah. I just can't let it go. That's my
right.
Everybody else, like something happens, and like that pissed me off, and then 20 minutes later they put no, not me. I'm like, I gotta say something to that guy. I have to say something, because that's the only way we correct this behavior.
Right. No, and like most people are counting on that. Most people don't want to, want trouble, so they let it slide when someone cuts in front of them, on the line or getting on the bus. Like I remember you said that happened once where the guy everyone's on line to get in the bus and he just comes in from the side, gets on ahead of everybody. They're counting on people.
He said to me, "Where I come from, we don't wait in lines." And I'm not going to repeat my answer to him.
Good. Get us in trouble.
But he went to the end of the line.
Well, yeah, you have a more imposing presence than I do. Like I said, I'd have to shoot them because they wouldn't be intimidated by me physically. So,
all right, but I'm going to go to bed.
All right, John.
I'm going to be great. And on the subway tomorrow. That's not a good match.
Yeah, avoid all fights tomorrow.
Yeah,
just have a quiet commute.
Thank you for watching, and check out Marshall Strong. It's issue 2. You could also get issue 1, right?
Yeah, 1 is available as an add-on.
Yeah, you can get issue number 1. You can issue number 2. They're all made. Mike made them years ago. I remember thinking you were crazy making a comic 10 years ago, lo and behold. And then we make them together. And if you're watching this, you could also get issue 1 and issue 2 of Heroic Tales over on Fund My Comic. And that's it. Check them out. All right.
All right, John. Good night. That was fun.
Bye-bye.
Take care.